permit.
So, any changes or additions to the agenda?
I make a motion, we accept the agenda as written.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. So this is actually the third one down on the list, but we're going to do it first as we have some help with some of the audio here this evening, and we're going to want to be careful that we speak into the mics for that. Bill, you'll let us know if there's an issue?
Yes.
Thank you.
Talk over each other.
And as Penny said, don't talk over each other. The sentences won't make much sense. So, you have Mr. Marabito for the applicant?
Yes. My name is Paul Marabito from Ross Engineering Company, representing the applicants, the heirs. At the last meeting, we were asked to submit some details for the proposed boulder wall that's going to be used for landscaping. We submitted those. Those are nothing more than large stones that sit on the ground, in a small bed of crushed stone, and they'll be placed in this area here. There's also some in this area here. This orange line furthest back in the wetland is the 100-foot buffer zone, so that work is in this area here. And there's also a short wall here for landscaping purposes. This is an existing home that's outside the buffer zone. It's going to be, this is the proposed home. The existing one is up here, which is going to be raised and reconstructed in this configuration. We also extended the gravel tracks for the wheels for the boat trailer up to this area here. The other issue came up was whether or not we had 15,000 square feet of disturbance, and we did the calculations. We came up with 12,500. I spoke to Amy earlier in the week, and she asked that we push the line out to give the workers more room to work around the limit of work line. That came up to 14,600 square feet. Other than that, there haven't been any other changes made to the plans.
Penny?
Nope, thank you, Paul.
I'm good now.
Lisa?
Thank you very much.
Amy?
Thank you.
Welcome.
From the audience, any questions?
Gregory White, I'm representing the abutters, John and Kathleen Hillman.
Sure.
And I think that it's the boat ramp is the.
Mr. White, I'm not sure that Mrs. Hillman can catch that. Maybe you need to be at a mic.
Yeah.
Excuse me.
Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Should I sit?
Yep, sure. Please.
Thank you. And I don't understand, has there been a change in the gravel driveway, the extended, more depicted as to what it is? It looks like the whole driveway is within the 100-foot buffer, is that correct?
For the boat, yes.
For the boat ramp, correct?
Yes, it is.
So the first,
It's not a ramp, it's a,
No, what we're going to do is to dig a trench about this wide, so the tracks of the boat trailer can go over it. It'll be filled with gravel up to the existing grade of the lawn, and that will absorb water into the ground as well and recharge it. And it'll be just used there so the wheels of the boat trailer don't sink into the ground.
so I'm assuming there's two of those.
There's two of them, yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
One for each wheel.
And then it's going to, but what changed, I think, was that before the question was it too short and would something be sticking
Yes.
out in the road? And so they've extended that further back. But to your question, it's within the 100-foot buffer.
so as far as looking at it within the 100-foot buffer, the conservation, it is within the purview, and that is also, I think, where the drain is located, which I just repeat and raise that concern, that has been a catch-all for water at that curve. My client's driveway comes right down and looking to the right. They're going with boat or boats, and I haven't gotten an explanation as to whether it's a singular or is it multiple. Is it going to be restricted? We don't know. And from a practical matter, I'd asked this question the previous time, there's a driveway. They're gonna have a driveway over on the Prospect Beach side, and it looks to me from their proposed plan, isn't there sufficient space right next to the driveway to place that boat ramp there?
No.
Can I, maybe something that might help a little bit? Paul, can you show where the property line is and where something can actually be parked on there? Because it seems to me like there's quite a bit of land that's not part of this property that,
This, outlined in yellow is the perimeter of the property.
right,
This is the proposed driveway. And in this area here, they'd be coming in from Prospect Ave. This is the existing lawn area here, and out there would Foster Road.
so what's the distance, Paul, from the length of the boat parking area that's actually on private property?
Here,
Yes.
it's about 40 to 45 feet. This is a 50-foot buffer, and this is a 100-foot buffer. That's about 45 feet.
Okay.
So the plan would be to push the, I mean, the tires would come back to here, back of the boat would probably overhang a little bit. I mean, it'll be well out of view of any traffic, and it'll be set back from here as well. So this is the catch basin that's in the street, there's another one down here. But where this is gravel, which will absorb water, you'll have less water running to this point, just along the area of the track.
And just, can you point out the edge of the pavement, Paul?
At the edge of pavement is this purple line. It's actually Cape Cod berm. Comes down here, it goes to the basin, it keeps going out to the small island area.
Okay. So I guess my point is that anything that's parked there, at least it can't be on, or shouldn't be left on the town property. So it's gotta be back, looks to me, at least 10 feet from the edge of the pavement. If it were conditioned.
It's probably closer to 12 feet to 15 feet from the edge of the pavement.
Okay.
The pavement's actually out from the layout line, which is the yellow line.
So if I may, I understand that it's tight on this side, but what's over here that doesn't, which would not be within the 100-foot buffer?
He's got some vertical landscape walls there because of the grade of the lawn.
And that's not, how's that any different? They have to grade this, as I understand.
Pardon?
They have to grade this, they have to level this to make it,
No, what they're gonna do is to dig down about a foot, and they're gonna remove the soil that's there and replace it with gravel, so when the tires from the boat trailer come over, it won't be sinking into loam or soft soil. It'll be on top of a gravel base. Those two tracks will be level with the lawn.
they'll be level with the lawn, they're gonna dig down. I think the question was asked last time, is this tree going to go?
No.
The trees in the layout, you'd have to get permission from the town to take it out, it's within the layout. I mean, to have that go would be of some benefit for sight distance for people in general going up and down the road, especially people coming out of Prospect Avenue, but that's a decision the town would have to make.
So I still ask the question, is space here that the same would then take it onto a side road off of Edward Foster being a much more direct route
No,
for
yeah.
going to First Cliff.
He doesn't have any room on either side of the driveway, because in this area here, we've got landscape walls. showing
Paul, just be
elevation.
sure you can, be sure Mrs. Hillman the mic is picking that up too, please.
These are landscape walls that the landscape architect was proposing, and the grading's gonna grade up to it. This is on a fairly steep slope compared to this level area. This is fairly level. These walls here are an elevation 27.5, which is about 3.5 feet above the grade here. This is the layout line of the roadway, so any boat would have to be from here back. And we don't have the same distance here for a boat. There's a wall here and a wall here. We don't have enough distance for the length of the boat to go in there.
You've got a driveway, and you've got more distance, and I don't know that there's a setback requirement for a driveway, where you could expand that driveway to the boundary line. Wouldn't that give,
Driveway here,
sure.
No, we can't do that, because if we do that, then we start to exceed the stormwater thresholds.
So I'm just, your point is that, is the driveway and whether there's another place for it? That's
Yes, it
outside-
is.
That's outside of the buffer.
A, that's outside of the buffer. B, obviously, it takes away the site interference to my clients pulling out of their driveway. And I appreciate the walls, but could the landscaper do something to make between the space between the current driveway and the boundary, looks like it's 10.34. So it's 10 feet wide. I don't know how wide, it doesn't tell us in the plan how wide the boat is. On my plan, it doesn't. Maybe it does on that one.
No, that's probably 12 to 14 feet wide when it's done for the area for the boat.
So if we have 12 to 14, and we have 10 here, we've got to have another 2 here. So if they just expand that driveway, I'd submit that would work. They've got a boat where the driveway is. They keep all the impervious as far away from the ocean as possible, and it's off of the main road. All of which, traffic, main road, obviously is not the conservation concern.
Right.
That's planning, but we're here in conservation because they do have primary authority, and to,
Our concern is the disturbance in the buffer zone, and if it's significant or not.
and there's a difference there. Disturbance in the buffer zone where it's existing, and outside of the buffer zone where I just presented, maybe there's a little bit of tweaking to do for the walls, but there's another 10 feet there.
Okay. Thank you. Do you have any other, because I want to open this up to the audience. Sure.
Is that,
John Hill, the other issue in connection with this is really a safety issue as to where it is. Our driveway is very close to the boundary. It's only about 4 or 5 feet from that boundary line on the south side of it. That ramp where the boats are going to be is 4 feet maybe from that boundary line also. And we have a hard time getting out of our driveway because of all the traffic that comes down Edward Foster Road. It's on a hill with a big bend on it. We showed you photographs last time.
Sure.
So that's the other issue in connection with that particular area.
Okay. Thank you. Mrs. Hillman?
Could I say something?
Sure.
He's talking about digging gravel trenches, right? Well, that'll only it'll drain all the water to and bringing it out into the road there. No. The other thing is, up to a couple of years ago, when the heirs bought the property, the pool water was running down over the mound and round down there. Now, that's all chemicals. So that could interfere with conservation land, because our trees have died from it. They have a pool and it's all piped all the way round, and I don't know if it's been connected into the old leaching fields, but the old leaching fields I think are at the side of our house and our land. Shouldn't that be tested to make sure that there's not chemicals there? They were, and Mr. Robot had it just running into our yard, and then he just turned it at the back of the fence and it was running down all the mound towards where they want to build up the area.
So this is the water when they clean the pool or something, Mrs.?
I don't know, they just had it running from the pool house. And a long black pipe runs all the way around the pool area, even now, going across now to the back corner. Previous, last year before, I don't know if it was done when they connected, but that just disappears. Now, is that going into the old leaching fields? Is the chemicals going into the old leaching fields now?
Is there any kind of drain, Paul, or any sort of under drain?
For the pool?
Yeah.
I have no idea. I mean, the pool's outside of the buffer
Where's that
zone,
from?
but I don't know.
Is the pool staying, or is there, what?
No. This is the existing pool, which
Yeah.
is going. This is the new one. This
So
is
it's
pretty
gonna be
old.
state,
This is all coming out.
Okay, so there's gonna be a brand-new pool
Yes.
there.
so it'll be
If you meet
state of
all
the art.
If you meet all the current standards for pools.
So,
sure.
worst case scenario, we can put in the orders that any discharge from the pool needs to go into the sewer or something like that.
Can you put it in? Is an in-ground pool, is that a permanent fixture? When you put in an in-ground pool, it becomes a permanent fixture, right?
I'd say it's pretty permanent, sure.
So then, that's where the 20 feet distance to our land comes into play, right? Because the front of the house is on Prospect Street, and the pool as it is now is within a few feet of our garage. And therefore, if he's going to extend it,
I would, Mr. Silman, to be, not to pass the buck, but that's not part of the, it's outside of the buffer zone. So if there's an issue with the pool being constructed in terms of a setback for the town, that would be an issue that you'd want to take up with the building department.
I'm concerned about all the chemicals that have been.
So to your question about that, if there's, we can put in our orders that any discharge from the pool should go into the town sewer or for discharge. Sometimes a pool needs to be flushed out or something like that, so we gotta make sure that we can ask about the discharge of that pool. Say if they have to pump it down some or clean out the filters or something, we can ask where that discharge is going, okay? But again, it's outside of, that's outside of the buffer zone. But if it were to flow into the buffer zone, then it's a concern for us.
So I think what Mrs. Hillman is identifying is, if anything, it's going to flow is south. It is downhill. They're going to grade down by Edward Foster, but the rest of the lay of the land is north to south. The discharge from that pool is going to go one of two places. It's either going to go down into the buffer area, or it's going to go onto the Hillman's property and then down into the buffer area. So in both cases, I appreciate if there's a condition put in there that it has to be connected into the sewer, then her concern of the discharge, because it is chemicals, it's pool chemicals, and I appreciate that the setback is not within your purview, but it's clear. The old pool and the new pool, we're much closer to, my clients are being substantially more affected by the potential impact of chemicals. So those are the main concerns, the safety coming out of their driveway, of the placement of, and I still haven't gotten an answer, is it one, or is it going to be restricted to one boat? Two boats? Is that going to be, it's the distance, even as a 50-foot, is it still restricted to how many boats they can have there if there are multiple?
I think that our purview, again, is the disturbance there and whether we feel that that's an issue.
And that's within the 100-foot.
I understand.
So the disturbance, if it's limited to one, would be less than two, because the length is going to be more.
It's the disturbance in the ground, digging it up and placing that. I'm not sure that we need to get into what they can park there, to be quite honest with you. Okay. Anything, I want to open this up if there's anybody else in the audience that wants to.
I'm deaf and I have trouble getting out of my driveway, like I said before. I can't see around that corner, and if there's boats there, I will have less. I am not dumb, but I don't hear very well.
Sure.
And there is no room there for a sidewalk because our property goes right to the road when it was surveyed. So there is people going all the time. And when a school bus comes down Bridge Street, they can't see round that corner because I can't when I'm coming down in my car. We have a marina which is so busy, and there's big trucks and trailers coming all the time. Now we have big sailboats going around there. I think safety is a very important part of my objective to what they're trying to do. And I think safety is not just my safety. We have kids down there all the time.
Sure.
And it could be your kid.
Mm-hmm.
If your kid got knocked down, you wouldn't be happy. And if I went and I saw it happen, I saw dogs get knocked down, then it's not a very nice sight.
Right.
And I think we have the right to say that we don't want their boats blocking our view because it's our line of view from our house.
Okay,
But in winter, all the water washes off because halfway down from where the pool is, when they put the pool in, they raised all the land higher than our land. And so it was all filled at that corner. And there's big boulders around there. And that all sheds onto our land too. So that runs in and it runs down the driveway and it makes it extremely difficult and icy in the winter. So it's, when I thought the law said that you're not allowed to run water into people's land, and that was going to be changed by Mr. Rowbottom, but it wasn't. But it's right into our, almost, it's into our property line.
okay. Paul, just can you, and again, this is really outside of the 100-foot piece, but you're here, so we'll just take a quick look at it. The topography from the existing to the proposed, does that change any water that's going to go on to the Hillman's property?
We're talking this area here?
All the way up?
No. Everything's flowing in this direction here. Yeah, these are the contours, the water's all flowing toward Edward Foster Road.
Mm-hmm.
And there's nothing shedding out of their property from the site. Bradley, just quickly reiterate about her concern about the site distance and everything. Their driveway is right in here. This is the property line of the street, so the boat has to be from here back. There's approximately 12 to 15 feet between the property line and the edge of the pavement here. 15 feet is a very conservative number from a traffic engineering point of view, as far as how far back from the curb that you need to be able to see cars coming down. When they pull up to the edge of the pavement, they're gonna be in this area here. The boat's gonna be back in here. If there's anything blocking their view, perhaps it's their hedge and this tree here as well. But the issue of the boat being here is not gonna have any impact on their view coming out of the driveway.
Okay. Paul, just one quick one. Around the swimming pool, is that concrete or pavers, or what's the surface?
He shows a pool terrace here.
Yeah,
I don't have the, those are probably pavers.
yeah. I realize you're outside of the 15,000, but
Yeah.
you're just under the 15,000 in
Well-
disturbance.
The reason we're under, because we added another 10 feet to give the men more room to work.
I understand that.
Which really doesn't count as disturbance, but we did that because we could still be under the 15.
I understand that, and, but what I guess my point is, if there's any way when they construct the pool, if someone could be cognizant of that, and maybe look at some sort of drain or something, French drain right along the edge of that pool, to keep any excess water from shedding onto the Hillman property.
Yeah, I mean, if they know they can't put water on your neighbor's property.
I'm just bringing it up, it was,
I'll check with the landscape architect.
That'd be-
Let's go to a few of these.
would appreciate it. Thank you.
In closing, I would just clarify. This may say the water sheds that way, but I went walk the property. It sheds like this. There's a gully right where that pool's going to go. That's nothing but a beat-up old shrubbery. Maybe it'll look a lot nicer. That pool is getting much closer. It is, and I appreciate that's not within the buffer, but that is a shedding, and that is a concern of water going there. And if you walk the property, you take a ride out there, you're going to see, there's no question, this is not that way. It's like a triangle that way. That water's going to the Hillmans.
Yep.
Second is, I'm still perplexed. You got a driveway here, there's certainly.
You've made your point. We're going to open this up, and I appreciate it. Thank you. Is there anybody else in the audience that would like to speak to this?
I
Yes, ma'am. One more.
I'd like to suggest you come down and take a look how high it is at the back of my,
I've walked it. I did.
in my garden.
No, I didn't walk in your yard. I walked in the applicant's property.
Well, I'm inviting you to come down and look at how it runs onto our property. And yes, we do have a concrete slab all the way around.
Yep. And Mr. Marabito just told me all that's going to get removed so that they can build a new pool.
Yes.
And when they are building the pool, I asked him to speak with the landscape architect and see if they couldn't take into consideration anything that's shed from that and be sure, because they are not supposed to put it on your property, anything, okay? So they have the means to be able to correct that either through a French drain or some other piece so that water doesn't go towards your property.
And there's nothing about the chemicals that are already been running for years. And we have letters asking Robert, and he's been going to read it. If it goes, if they've piped it into where the old leaching fields were, will it run soak down? Because, you know, water travels underneath, so the surface might be level, but water has a way of traveling in many directions.
Again, it looks to me like the pool house is out of that, but we're gonna request that any discharge from the pool, my little knowledge of swimming pools is typically when filters get cleaned, if the pool's overflowing.
They have a big black pipe, if you walk their garden,
I understand.
you would see the big black pipe.
I understand, but all that's gonna be ripped out when they demolish this, and they're gonna repipe this thing. And if they can get the water that would come from the discharge of that swimming pool and get it into the drain or sewer, then I think that would eliminate the problem. Your concern. Do you understand?
I think so. I thought water from pools is contaminated, therefore it is treated as contamination, and you have it put into a tank and taken away. You don't just put it into a drain that goes down to the...
Well, then we've got a lot of swimming pools in Scituate that aren't,
I'm not worried about anybody else's. I'm worried about
okay,
ours.
okay,
We don't have a pool.
right.
But I do feel that it's very important that, you know, things are done right, and I don't think this is altogether being done right.
Okay. All right, well, again, we're asking that they deal with both the discharge from the pool and the runoff to this piece, and we'll look at what we condition.
And we're doing nothing about the boats. So the gravel will go in just the same, which will make trenches. When you put a trench and you fill it with gravel like this, what it does, it brings all the water from around to pull into it, and it will run right down onto that corner of Bridge Street. Down by the corner and our driveway is out onto Edward Foster Road. It has to do, because that's how you build a French drain. You dig a hole and you fill it with gravel, and it pulls away, and it pulls all the water out from the surrounding area.
Right.
And that end will end up on Edward Foster Road.
Okay, we'll take all that into consideration. Anybody else? Okay,
I make a motion to close.
a second?
I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, thank you very much.
And then I get a copy of it.
Martin at 67 Border Street.
Take care, we're good. Thank you.
Did a good job. Thank you, Bill.
Thanks, Bill.
Bill, is that something that we have available all the time now, or if we need it?
I think you have to order them.
It's a real bargain at $200 an hour.
Thank you.
Thank you.
For anybody who's dead,
Sure.
everybody who's dead, by law, the town has to drive it for you.
And we want to make sure that you understand the hearing process. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you.
Thank you. So for Martin?
Yes.
Let me start, Frank.
Sure.
Yeah. I am Bill Arnberg. I'm with Jeff DeLisi, Paul Marabito, and Monica Martin, property owners here with us tonight. And I think a few things which we want to go over, but I think I'm going to let Paul talk to this first. Yeah, we did have, after our last commission meeting, we did have a meeting with Paul Marabito, someone else from his office, Brad Holmes, Tom Liddy, Amy, and Bob Vogel to go over to discuss stormwater and the open issues. And I guess we'll talk a little bit about stormwater because we have some thoughts on that first, but I think Paul received today a letter from Tom Liddy, and I'll let Paul speak to that first, if you want, Paul.
Okay. Back on March 21st, we had a meeting here in this room for the people Bill just mentioned, and Tom Liddy had reviewed our plans, and this was a follow-up on his first review or second review. And he had asked that we make some changes to the plan, which were minor in nature. And he was all set, and he was gonna submit a review letter stating that he was in agreement with everything we did. What he reviewed was the work under the River Protection Act, which is part of your wetland regulations. He also reviewed the resource areas, the delineation of the wetland line. He also agreed with our location of the coastal bank. The coastal bank was put on the plan in accordance with the policy 92-1 of the DEP. It can only be done by a land surveyor because it's based upon elevations and grades of the land. He didn't have any issues with that. So we expected to get a letter back saying that he was in agreement with everything that we changes, that we made changes to. He had also asked us to compare areas in the riverfront. His initial comments were that we were not in a situation where the project could be classified as a redevelopment project, but that changed once we showed him the numbers. And we also opined on the report that he produced indicating why he thought it was a new development. And that document was reviewed by Bill Arnberger as well, and it turned out it was not pertinent to the site at all. The bottom line is, we had redone the numbers to look at it from both a redevelopment and a new development. When we did the numbers from a new development, they actually worked in our favor. So we decided to hold it as a redevelopment numbers, because that's what the regulations place the site as, and he agreed with all those numbers. And in his report that we received today, I received about 2 o'clock, he mentions that there was a net reduction of 892 square feet of impervious area within the 200-foot riverfront. The riverfront is up in this area here, so between here and the marsh, there's a 892 square foot reduction of impervious area. There's also a net reduction of 2,077 square feet of degraded area within the riverfront area. There's a net reduction of 1,473 square feet of impervious surface within the 50-foot buffer zone, which is in this area here. So between here and the marsh, where some of the work is being done, there was a substantial reduction of 1,473 square feet. He also mentioned the project did incorporate a water quality improvement swale near the tennis court, which is right in this area here. And then he went on to say that he was looking for cross sections to show how we had delineated the top of coastal bank. He didn't ask for those at the March 21st meeting, so I was very surprised to see it in this letter here, because he was in agreement with the location of the coastal bank, because some of his review is based upon the work that's being done within 50 feet of the coastal bank. He also mentioned that we didn't provide any information to demonstrate how we met performance standards for work being done in the area of the home, in the area of the coastal bank. I do know we did talk about that. What's unique about the property is there's two things going on here. The DEP has a policy, which is a chart that shows you how to determine where a coastal bank is and where it isn't, and it's all based upon the slope. Most of the site is ledge, whether it's exposed or it's very close to the surface. A coastal bank service serves two purposes. One is to provide sediment to a coastal dune, a coastal beach, or a barrier beach. This is all salt marsh in here, so we don't have any of those features. The other thing a coastal bank is is to act as a buffer to storm wave action, where the waves would come in and go up against the bank. If you think of something like Fourth Cliff or Third Cliff, where the top of the bank is 30 to 40 feet above the water, a coastal bank like that would act as a buffer to storm waves and flood damage. We don't have any wave action in here. This is the Gulf way out in here. There are no waves in this area here. This portion of the land here is in FEMA flood zone AE 12, which means the water theoretically would come up to elevation 12. In that high water storm that we had in the beginning of March, the water came up to about elevation 8.5 on the entire site. This elevation here is about 8, and the 8-foot contour is over here. The point I'm making is that this site doesn't act as a coastal bank. When you read the performance standards in the Wetlands Protection Act, it doesn't provide sediment to a coastal beach or barrier beach or a coastal dune, and you don't have that vertical buffer that would protect it against wave action. One of the things that does help a coastal bank is when you have vegetation on it to stabilize it, and there is some landscaping in this area here. The point I'm making in response to his comments is that we had talked about this and that the site really doesn't act like a coastal bank when you read the performance standards in the Wetlands Protection Act. And his other comment was that there's this understanding that there's going to be a peer review for stormwater management, and that he wanted the peer reviewer to verify the calculations which he reviewed based upon our numbers, which are the numbers in this chart and also in some supplemental areas. Some of the 2 additional supplemental plans. We prepared those supplemental plans at his request when he asked us to compare redevelopment versus new development areas. And he was in agreement with those areas, so we're at a loss as to why a stormwater peer reviewer would review these, because Mr. Liddy is the peer reviewer for these issues that I just described. So I think that's all I had to say about that report. Subsequent to the last meeting, the only changes that we made in this plan were fairly minor. At the meeting we had with Tom Liddy, he asked us to clarify further with architectural plans, and we did submit the foundation plans. On the initial submittal, we had a solid concrete wall from here to here, and that's been replaced with piers instead of a full foundation wall. This section will be on a wall because there's a very short vertical distance between the ledge and the first floor of that open deck. And the rest of the perimeter for the decks are going to be on sonotubes or concrete piers. The other thing we did was, this is the silt line, the silt sock line. Our first submittal had it coming up into here. And he asked that we put it in behind the shed and bring it along the upper area of the tennis court. This is the stormwater swale that he's referring to. And the other thing we had was a proposed construction stabilization entrance here with a trap rock to keep the tires clean before they go out onto Border Street. We've also, we just finished the stormwater calculations, and the only change to that was to add we added a very small water quality swale in this area here, and that was the limit. So those are the only changes to the plan. The discussion we had at the March 21st meeting about stormwater, what we talked about was the stormwater bylaw and the definitions and the amount of disturbance. And both myself and Greg Tansey explained that when you're doing stormwater calculations, what you're looking for is whether or not you're gonna have an increase of water running off the site, or if you're gonna have an increase in volume. We have neither one of those. The other thing you look for is whether or not they're gonna change the drainage pattern, so you'd have a negative impact on your neighbors. This yellow line represents the property line over here and over here. And on our property, we have a salt marsh. We have a salt marsh here, and we have a salt marsh going all the way out to the Gulf River. That's all tidal flows. And what we found was, in the numbers on the plan, and we stated this at the meeting in March, was that we have less impervious area on the site after the proposed development is completed. What that means is that when you're doing stormwater calculations, what you do is you compare the existing impervious areas with the proposed impervious areas. Normally, you would have an increase in an impervious area, which will generate more volume of water, so you have to capture that on your site under the stormwater bylaw. The other thing is that if you have more water running off the site, you want to make sure that it does not impact the abutters' properties. Well, we have no abutters that it would impact because the water's all coming onto our property once it gets into the marsh. From here, the land slopes upward toward Border Street, so there is no impact on any abutter. But when we ran the numbers, what we showed was that, and I have a chart here that I can leave with you. This is the summary chart that's in the stormwater bylaw, in the stormwater calcs. It shows that for the peak discharge, which is the water that wants to run off the site, there's 13.87 cubic feet per second for the 100-year storm for the site. That's been reduced by 7.78. Because we have less impervious area, there'd be less cubic feet per second for water. I'm trying to leave the site under any storm event. Likewise, for the volume control, under the stormwater bylaw, if there's an increase in volume, it has to be captured on the site. There's actually a reduction from 0.83 to 0.54 acre feet. So having said that, there's no requirement for any stormwater mitigation on the property, mainly because you have a decrease in the impervious area. And the work that we're doing, we're going to be removing driveways, for example. We're adding landscaping there where the driveway was in this area. There's some landscaping here which will help stabilize the coastal bank, which is recommended in your performance standards. The calculations that we performed, which is in this document here, it's pretty thick. And the plans that went with it clearly show that we don't trigger any of the requirements for stormwater mitigation on the property. This is under your stormwater bylaw. I think, as you know, under the DEP regulations for single-family homes, there is no requirement to perform any stormwater calculations. So I think I'll end with that update. And I don't know if Bill wants to say anything, or?
Yeah, just to tell Paul what the Martin's observations are on this. And they're kind of as follows, is the town's consulting engineer, Tom Liddy, has done a very thorough and good job, but we can't have a situation where recommendations of consulting engineers asking other consulting engineers, asking them to review our three engineers' work. It's a circular thing that never ends here. And at the last meeting, we agreed to have that meeting, and the town's consulting engineers, other than some very minor things that Paul said everything was fine. We sat in a meeting on the 21st. We said, everything was fine other than these little tiny tweaks. Then the day of the hearing, we get a letter bringing us up. I say, we're caught in, you know, we're caught in a circular trap where there's no foreseeable end to this. But, and I don't know where he's, you know, saying, well, it's gonna be stormwater, have a stormwater guy look at the environmental issues. The reason you hire a peer consultant is because the environmental guys look at the environmental stuff. You don't have the stormwater guys look at the environmental stuff. So, we object to that. The second thing, from Paul's standpoint, at the outset, our client was told they needed a $2,400 check for stormwater review and whatever. The engineers, we spent several $1,000s doing stormwater calculations here, which verified exactly what we've been saying all along. So if there is going to be anything, we really have to narrow the scope. But under Section 6 of, and I know, albeit it's not of the commission's making, but our stormwater bylaw and regulations are a mismatch and a mess, which I know into the future are going to be changed, but that doesn't help us today. So I get that. But under Section 6 of the regulation, we meet the criteria of administrative stormwater review. And not only that, that's only if we're increasing the flow. We're not. We're decreasing the flow. And even if we were increasing the flow, under the regulations, under Section 9(2), if the discharge is to coastal storm flowage, the commission can waive it anyhow, but we're not increasing it. So we're just looking to try to get out of the loop of where we're in here. We have a situation that's bettering the situation. If Tom wants the cross-sections for the coastal bank, that's fine. We can do that and condition that. But when you meet the criteria under Section 6 of administrative stormwater, there is no provision for peer review. So one of the reasons our client, we told her right away, she brought down a check for $2,400. We wanted to see what a scope of the review and services. We still haven't seen that. But one thing for sure we don't want a stormwater guy doing is reviewing the environmental stuff that we've already paid thousands of dollars to the town's other consulting engineers to look. So we really don't even know what the scope of it is. But what I'd submit to the board at this point, and the other issue is a more pragmatic issue. And what my understanding is, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, the Conservation Commission only has one consulting engineer for stormwater, who's a one-man show, who's an excellent engineer, but the Martins are ready to build their home. And I just don't think the capacity, we can't wait 2 months, 3 months, 4 months for someone to review something where, just to put on our pragmatic hat, even if the several $1,000s of calculations there, and they are correct, our only flowage is the coastal storm flowage. It doesn't flow towards any neighbors. We're an administrative stormwater project, so what I'm saying is, I've commissioned, I have to explain, my clients are saying to me, Bill, why are we paying $2,400 when we fall under a provision where there is no review, and why are we having another town's consulting engineers review something that the other town's consulting engineers already reviewed and we paid thousands of dollars for? So I frankly can't answer any of those questions. I think they're very good questions.
I've got some comments, and then I'm going to let the commission members go first. Well, all right. So the first piece is what I would call transects. It was the first piece that popped up, and Amy, you can correct me if I'm wrong with this. The transects really would show, that when you go to the DEP guidelines for coastal banks, it's really a transect. You're looking at a transect or simulated transect to do that. So the best way to look at this site and determine whether or not it meets the criteria for a coastal bank is to get a transect.
Right.
We've already
said we'll do it.
But I
That's
think,
not an issue.
but I think they were asked for a while back, and that's the purpose of asking for a transect.
We're on March 21st, we were done. That was not asked for, or we would have provided
Tom
it.
never asked me for one, number one, and number two, the transects are only done by us as land surveyors. all it is a guide to determine
The,
where the coastal
the
bank
copper,
is and
the
it
top of
isn't.
coastal bank is difficult to determine, Paul. It's not like a neat and bound, it's not like a wetlands, and there's different people with different opinions. It's one of the first things I learned getting on this commission, that it's a moving target, and you know it from 43 Collier, from where initially the coastal bank was determined.
We did well.
All right,
That's
so,
another story, but what I'm saying is, Frank, that policy from the DEP is simply a guide, and the land surveyors are the ones that do it. We've done it numerous times. If you remember, we did it on Great Rock Island, where there are hundreds.
and I'm not, and I understand your concern that this isn't gonna get wave action.
The transects are not required information to be submitted, that's why we didn't submit it. Normally, when we put the top of the coastal bank on there, it's agreed to because they know it was done by us, but we have no problem giving you the transects.
All right, but I think, but I want to, so we understand why they're important to see, because I think it's the best way, at least from me, I can look at a transect from that property and compare it to the guideline from DEP and see if it mirrors one thing or the other. I think it makes it fairly simple. Do you agree with that?
If you look at it and you won't understand it, call me. It's a,
I've looked at a couple of plans before. I think that's the main reason to get those. I guess my question would be on the stormwater, and I understand your arguments. Believe me, we have a lot of frustration with this. We've had discussions about this. I'm not happy with where we are with a bunch of the stormwater pieces, as well as the applicant. And we've got work to do on this. So in the meantime, trying to make sure that the projects work within the guidelines that we have. It seems to me like you put together a tremendous amount of information to show that we aren't in the storm. This doesn't have to be in the stormwater piece.
right, because that book follows the regulations of the stormwater bylaw.
So just, and I'm playing the devil's advocate, okay? You're asking me to read that and determine whether or not I agree with those calculations.
What you could do is take this chart that I had, and you can look at that, because anyone reviewing it, this is the first thing that they look at. They're gonna look at our results for volume.
Yeah.
Peak discharge, when they're reviewing it under the stormwater bylaw. And this is the summary table, which is in the front part of the.
I understand.
documents.
But there's a lot of documentation here to show that there's
What
no,
you're looking at are the graphs and everything for the different year storms.
Right.
yeah.
okay.
No, I mean, I wouldn't expect you to understand it, but this is easy.
I mean, I could give it a shot, but quite honestly, it's an awful lot of information. And I realize as an engineer, you're gonna calculate these things, and you're gonna stamp it, and you're gonna say that that's okay. And I get that.
Right, because when we do this, there's specific programs that we follow
Right.
for engineering drain calculations that are set by the state and local governments, and those are the procedures we follow.
And so, your point to all this is that regardless of the area being disturbed on the site, even though it exceeds 15,000 square feet, which I'm assuming it does, or we wouldn't be talking about this.
Well, we did that because the town didn't agree with our assessment of the amount of disturbance.
Okay.
But the clue to this whole thing, and that's what I pointed out that meeting in March was, when you have a reduction of impervious area, then you have less water leaving the site.
Well, I'm not
Okay?
disagreeing with a lot of that. I mean, I
So what I'm
think,
saying is, even if the whole site was 100% disturbed, the stormwater bylaw isn't just one thing you look at, this isn't disturbance. It's what's the impact off-site when you do all this work.
so what's the quickest way, I mean, your frustration is the length of time that's happened here, and we can't control storms or other events that have happened during this time period. So, but we obviously want to make sure that we comply or follow the bylaws and rules and regulations in this town. And typically, stormwater will be dealt with a planning board unless there's conservations involved, so we deal with it. So I want to make sure that we do our diligence and get to the part that we think is right. At the same time, we try to accommodate the situation of a time frame for you and your client. All right? It seems to me like we need to do some review of this calculation. There's no way to get around that.
And Frank, the consulting engineer is waiting in the wings, ready to start the work. They've been waiting for the document that's on the table there, so.
Well, if I can just speak to this, and I agree with you, and I agree with the commission, but,
Well, nobody else has had a chance to speak yet,
well,
but
I can see the body language, Frank. But what the issue is, this is really a due process issue. You can't keep moving the ball, not you guys. You can't have multiple meetings where nothing's requested, and then it's requested months after a submission. That just isn't fair.
I understand.
It's
Bill,
not.
this is a very complicated site, right? We just brought that out at the very beginning. There's a lot of things going on. It's complicated.
Well, did it take
So
the consulting
takes-
engineer 3 months to figure out it was a
It
complicated
hasn't
site?
been going on for 3 months, so please don't exaggerate that. But it's a complicated site, and there's a lot going on with a lot of resource areas. You're presenting it as a redevelopment project, which again, that itself is an engineered calculation. The consulting peer review engineer, Tom Liddy, is a professional wetland scientist, not an engineer, so he does not have CAD so that he's able to confirm the calculations. So that would be one reason why I think he feels that maybe the backup engineering analysis, which is going to be looked at anyways when the stormwater is looked at, would be an easy, confirmation to do. So I don't think we're trying to complicate matters. We're just trying to evaluate the compliance of the project with the stormwater bylaw.
I understand that, but unfortunately, that isn't the history on this. It is not the history, so my clients are very concerned that we're running down a rabbit hole here. The day of the hearing, we're asked to do a few things we've never even heard of before. And now I'm being told, well, anything that Tom Liddy's told us, it might not be so, because he's not a surveyor. So where does that leave us? That the last 2 other meetings outside of this, the other meetings we've had, that now basically we haven't agreed to anything or said anything? Is that what we're being told right now? Because if it is, I just don't know how, we can comply with things if we know what is going to be complied, but what I was just told now is anything Tom Liddy's told us, it isn't necessarily so. And I don't know where the hell you go from there. I don't. This is unprecedented.
Tom Liddy's
That's not what I just.
comment, I think, was that he wanted verification for the calculations within that. I'd have to, I don't have the letter right in front of me.
Frank, what he said was,
Because you haven't had an opportunity to.
Yeah, that's
We
fine.
just got it today, but that's.
I understand.
beside the point.
So,
well, he's saying
Same boat as you.
recommending the impervious surface area and riverfront area disturbance calcs be verified by the peer reviewer. And what I stated earlier was, all this work he's talking about comes under the purview of the Wetlands Protection Act. The riverfronts is in the Wetlands Protection Act, not the stormwater bylaws. Furthermore, Tom asked us to do the calculations a much different way to compare them to what we had. And when we did that, he found that his way was more of a benefit to us. And we saw that after we did the numbers. So we stuck with our numbers, which was much more conservative, and he agreed with those. And when I saw this comment that he wants the person doing the stormwater to check the riverfront area calcs, that's apples and oranges. Stormwater and wetland stuff is completely different.
okay.
So I just don't know, now we're getting whipsawed between 2 consulting engineers. And we
Well-
haven't even seen the scope of what the other consulting engineer wants to look at. I don't even know.
Okay. Well, I'm gonna dwell on
The
this for a minute.
consulting engineer was asked to look at stormwater. So that's a typical stormwater review of something that we don't do in-house.
Amy, was he
Yep.
asked to look at stormwater under DEP or the town of Scituate?
Town of
Stormwater
Scituate,
bylaw.
Scituate bylaw.
Okay. Just gonna go back to members for a second, and then, hey,
I really don't have any questions, other than, you know, the stormwater has to be done. Maybe, Amy, you can ask Tom, what do you know, because we just got this today,
Right, and he's not here.
and he isn't here, and, we're not trying to hold the project up. We want to move forward to.
I don't see any end to this. I don't see
Well,
any end.
I think when the stormwater's done, there will be an end.
There won't be an end, because Paul just said he was directed to determine things apart from the stormwater based on what the town's consulting engineer told him to do. Now you're gonna have a second counting and say, well, I like to set these parameters different. And then we're gonna hire a third consulting engineer, but the other issue is the town of Scituate doesn't have any other consulting engineers.
I understand what you're saying.
But
Richard?
that's not true.
Yeah, well,
Yep.
We're not gonna
Richard?
fight.
The changes that were made, I like very much. It is a very complicated situation. I get the frustration. Actually, we share the frustration immensely with the backup of stuff that's going on. But it doesn't change the fact that we still have to do it right, unfortunately. I think there must be some way to make sure that this process from here forward at least moves quickly, or as quickly as possible. If the engineer is available and immediate, I mean, we do need to move it forward. We have to do all we can, but we can't shortchange the project or the process as much as we would like to. Believe me, we don't want to be here as long every meeting with difficult situations. That's it for now.
Okay. This is a two-part question. One, I'm going to address the concerns and questions that you have, so I have a clear understanding, as well as Amy, your understanding. This document I received today from Tom Liddy for 2 pages. Is it your understanding, if this is the information, that this is all the information that he needs them to answer to be able to make a determination, or is there additional information that is going to be required of them?
You know, Lisa, actually, I did not spend much time reviewing that letter because it came in today.
Okay,
So, yeah, I did not.
okay.
But yeah, I think that based on conversations that I had with him, that he's recommending verification of the redevelopment numbers, because it is complicated, you know, statute as to how you determine, based on the amount of ledge that's already on the property, based on the amount of development that's already on the property. You know, I think it's clear that we're in favor of the redevelopment and of that the reconstruction should happen. It's just a matter of confirming to make sure that the numbers make sense.
Okay.
So, and I believe the message that I took back from the meeting that we had that they speak of, it was a meeting at this table, was that he was comfortable with the resource areas, the coastal bank delineation with the transects. I think that would be the backup that he would need for that. You know, that there's a coastal zone management policy that we're now going by, so we definitely are looking for transects on all of our coastal bank projects.
And this is information that has been relayed to them, so we're all on the same page as far as,
Well, you know, this
What's
project has
required?
been evolving, and it's a very complicated project. We did stick to a lot of conversation regarding the area of disturbance and convincing that, with the town convincing the applicant that it actually triggered the stormwater bylaw, because they were convinced that the area of disturbance did not apply. So I think we definitely made some progress with that. But it's a very complicated project, and I think it's moving forward, for sure.
would it be beneficial to, for you guys to have another meeting to make sure everything's on, or does everybody understand the expectations of what you're looking for?
Well, hopefully we'll leave here and understand that.
Yeah, I'm thinking they should progress with the stormwater, and we should be in the home stretch.
Yeah.
Just,
Sure.
just a characterization of the meeting, I took a little something different. I agree with Amy that we came out of it saying do stormwater. It wasn't because we agreed. The ultimate thing was, we were told that it isn't perfect, but this is the way the town of Scituate has always done it, so we're not gonna change until there's new regulations. And if you want a building permit, you better do it. That's what we were told, period. And so, in the face of that, unless we want to get in litigation, we have no options, all right? So that was the fiat that was delivered to us, all right? So, with that in mind, so we don't belabor this, I just want to make sure Conservation Commission understands that we're an administrative stormwater project, and there is no mechanism or requirement of an applicant to pay for a consulting engineer. That's what it says, but we're willing to do something, because we understand, we take your point, you don't have the technical expertise to review this. But all we're looking for is scope of review and time period. Paul has already spent many thousands of dollars doing this is fine. But we have some,
I'm not sure if Mrs. Martin think it's fine, but go ahead.
well,
I do want to.
We'll get to you.
Yeah, okay.
go ahead, Monica, you can speak right now. if you
Okay.
want.
So, you know.
Yeah, your name and.
My name is Monica Martin, and we purchased this property back in May. This has just been a very large, has been a complicated project, and we have spent a lot of time, in our opinion, in understanding the property, as opposed to just jumping in and saying, oh, this is what we want to do. So we, I believe back in July, or last summer sometime, hired Paul to provide us with the expertise of what we needed to do to comply with the permitting process, expecting that this was complicated and it was going to take a little bit of time. So we're willing to be patient, but the issues, as I have sort of followed the timeline and what's gone on, is that up front, I don't believe we were informed of the expectations of what would be required, such as the transects, to satisfy whatever was necessary to meet the needs of the committee. So it's been, I feel like where I'm sitting here now in this meeting versus the last meeting, I don't recall the exact date on the last meeting, but I feel like there has been no progress. In fact, it feels like we have taken a step back. And because in the last meeting, I believe it was understood that we were going to have to, or at some point shortly after the last meeting, that we were going to have to do this stormwater review, which is here. And we were sort of willing to put whatever effort is necessary from an engineering standpoint to make sure that we're meeting the requirements, that the impervious area is decreasing, that we're not affecting the marsh, the lands around us, et cetera, in a negative fashion. I just feel like it has been this runaround. The time has been way more significant than I would, and just thinking about the whole complexity of the project. We spent a lot of time on the design process. We hired Paul, a landscape architect, to get the whole, in addition to the building design, to get the whole landscape really looked at from an expert point of view, as opposed to, we really were trying to do everything up front so that nothing would be left, to the end as unknown. Nothing would really fall through the cracks, because we knew this was conservation land, and we were taking everything very seriously and really getting everybody on board our landscape architect has been involved in this process throughout as well. She was here in the last meeting, not tonight, but one question, I know I'm being lengthy here. So it just, I'm confused now as to why we're going back and rechecking calculations. It almost seems like we're rechecking calculations that have been reviewed by a consultant that was performed by the engineering firm. And I'm also very confused as to why the report from the consultant from Tom Liddy was just received today. That really took me by surprise. I can't, I just don't understand. And I am sitting here from a perspective of a layperson really not knowing the process, and certainly respect your job and your responsibility to ensure that everything is done correctly and in accordance with the town bylaws, et cetera. But I guess it just sounds to me like you follow a plan and you answer a question, but now we're being told that we didn't answer the right questions, or we have new questions we need to answer, or somebody else needs to check, et cetera, so.
Okay. And I appreciate your willingness to share this and work with it, and we want to get feedback from folks that are going through this as well. If this property were next door to you when you ultimately build here, I'm sure that you would appreciate that someone was looking at that for the same reason that other folks hope that we review yours. So we're trying to do that for all the projects that happen here. And again, unfortunately, between a couple of canceled meetings, storm delays, load on the town from the number of things that have happened, it's made a crunch time for a lot of folks. Should that cost you a lot of time and money because they are both the same thing? That's not fair either, and so we need to look at that as well when we take all this into consideration. I don't believe that you're having any repetitive review of this project. I don't believe there's been any stormwater review of this project. There was a debate about stormwater and whether it was required or not, and your engineer and attorneys have gone through great length to show that they don't feel that stormwater review is required. In that process, they put together an awful lot of information that's still difficult to digest and analyze. And my question is, can that be reviewed to be sure that we're in agreement? And I understand you're paying for that report, and then we're gonna be asking for someone to take a look at that and make sure that we agree with that. But I'm not sure where else we get to with that. And there's a tremendous amount of information here either way. Mr. Ornberg has pointed out that under our bylaw, there's no statute to have that portion of it reviewed. I'm not quite sure how we get to that either. But I think we can sort that out. With regard to the report from the environmental consultant, Mr. Liddy, I'm not quite sure how I can explain why that's taken so long. He had the opportunity to look at this project, he made his report, and some of it to come back with something at the end of that time frame is certainly frustrating. So we'll take a look at that as well. I haven't asked anybody else in the audience if they want to speak to this, so I should just ask that. Is there anybody else here?
So,
Well, wait a minute, there's always somebody.
Steve Bjorkland. I actually have a project that's in later, which is not directly adjacent to this, but it's pretty close to this particular property. And I just start by saying that the stormwater bylaw is the biggest disaster this town has ever seen, and nobody knows how to interpret it. And that's what's going on here. That's the problem. And the amount of money that people are required to spend to develop a piece of property like this is absolutely absurd, and it's against what the bylaw was supposed to be. This administrative review was supposed to be a simple thing done within 30 days or you're approved. What's happening here is just disastrous.
Thank you.
I would like to, I live at 49 Border Street.
Your name is, ma'am?
Lynn Maloney. I would live at 49, which is next to this development, and not far from that one. And I just wanted to say that this is a very environmentally sensitive area, and I'm just hoping that you all tread slowly on this, because there's gonna be an awful lot of development along that riverfront. And, you know, both of these properties are down here, with Border Street here, and the water running through them. I don't know much about stormwater, but all I know is somebody needs to look closely at
Sure.
what's happening there.
Yep, thank you.
Lisa, were you set with your questions?
Yeah, I mean, it's a challenge to try to bring yourself up to speed when you get information at a last minute.
So, if I can make a suggestion on how we can move forward.
Sure.
So, because one of the things is, and again, the first aspect is, from a peer review standpoint, because you've more than one peer reviewer, you said? And again, no offense, but we need this thing moved on, and I question whether, unless a firm has multiple engineers, whether they have the ability to do that. That's what my question is. And if the answers are these two comments from Tom Liddy, I want the scope of review determined, but to be frank with you, I don't know what the scope of review was asked of the existing thing, but obviously it was the wrong scope if something came in today that's different from that scope. So I don't even know what's asked for, but if the scope of the review is, look at Tom Liddy's questions 1 and 2, look at the stormwater calculations to see if there's less water running off than more water running off, so that we fall under the administrative review. If that's the scope of it, then fine. I know you need the technical expertise for someone to review that, so that's fine. But if we're at the next meeting, and there's another half a dozen questions, and I don't know where you go from it. And again, our worst fears will be realized at that point. So if that is the scope of that, I would like two things. If the commission agrees with that, then, you know, the Martins will agree to that. But two, what we'd also like in turn is, A, who is the consultant that can handle this in an expeditious manner? And two, let's set a deadline here, so that if we're back here 3 weeks from now, we're not getting a report at 3 PM on the day of saying, oh, well, here's 3 more things that maybe we should take a look at. That's all we ask.
Okay, that's reasonable. Well, I would like to continue this to our next meeting, which is the 23rd.
Correct.
And I'd like the opportunity to discuss the consultant with Amy, do it with you, and we'll come to that, so that we can get not only that report, but get all the information timely enough so that we can act on that.
Okay, so just so I understand this, the next meeting, the 23rd, I don't think that's enough time that your person's gonna be able to review it.
It's not. It's
Okay.
10 days away. And just as of note, is that the way the peer reviews, especially for stormwater engineering reviews, go, is there is back and forth, because unless what Ross has provided is absolutely perfect without question, there will be some questions that come up that may need clarification. I mean, I've been
understand.
doing this for a long time, and I know that stormwater reviews always turn up things that need to be
Resolved,
answered and
sure.
resolved. So it's not usually a one-time shot.
Right.
But I completely agree that we, without haste, would like to get this going, and come to a conclusion so that the Martins can build their new home.
But
Definitely the goal.
we're back to the core issue, is what is the scope? If the scope is that's what we're reviewing, and if that says that we have less water coming off the site as opposed to more water, that's the end of the stormwater review. So I don't know what the multiple parts are. If you're telling me that's not what the scope of it is, then I need to know what the scope of it is.
I guess the only part to that, Bill, would be if an engineer review this and totally disagrees with the calculations that Paul has,
Understood.
then we would be obviously dealing with something different.
That's an understood thing, but the purpose of the whole storm improvement is if more water is coming off the site.
Right.
And if more
And
water
I- and-
isn't coming off the site, we shouldn't even be here.
I understand. And just so that you know, the commission appreciates it when someone takes a really hard look at a site like this and does deal with it in a sensitive manner. So they shouldn't feel punished for doing all that. I mean, that's one of the objectives that we ought to have here, and obviously isn't happening, or you don't feel is happening at this time. So
But again, if I'm slow, please tell me. All I want to know is what the scope is, and we still haven't said what the scope is, which leads to this spinning and getting back into the death spiral here. I
wouldn't
think
put it
the
that
simple
critically.
question is, if there's not more water coming off the site and it's reviewed, and we look at Tom Tulitti's thing and said, is that the scope?
I would say that should be the scope. And if,
Okay.
based on your spin on it, Bill, it should be a simple review with no, stones unturned. I'm sure it'll go smooth.
Okay.
Sounds good.
Mrs. Martin, did you want to add anything?
Well, I was just going to ask, that, as I understood it, there were kind of two parts to it, the conservation committee and then the stormwater was sort of a separate?
No.
Or is that?
No, they're reviewing it also.
Okay.
We would review the whole thing. It's done by two different entities, essentially.
The only reason I was asking is for I know that there's a 30-day appeal process, and I just wondered if one could be decided, like if there was, before the other, if this stormwater, that's why I was asking.
It's not a 30-day appeal.
Well, our orders, once we issue our
10.
10-day.
Yep,
Oh, 10, okay, so I.
yep.
60 in the local bylaw.
And we would issue the stormwater concurrently with the order of conditions.
Okay, that's what I was wondering.
All right. Amy, time-wise,
7 May.
what do you think?
7 May.
May 7th?
23rd's only 12 days. That won't work because we can't possibly get the information in ahead of time.
Right.
So what date do you have?
I have May 7th at 6:20.
All right, got a motion?
I make a motion to continue 67 Border Street to May 7th at 6:20.
Second?
Frank, just
Paul?
one comment. I'd like to request that the commission instruct anyone that's doing a peer review for our clients, that when they email it to conservation, that at the same time, it's also emailed to us, so we get it at the same time. Sometimes it takes one or more days to get to us. I mean, once it comes through email, it's public information, but we don't know when it's being sent.
Yeah.
So just out of professional courtesy, we'd like to get it at the same time you receive it. But someone would have to instruct the peer review consultants, no matter who they are, make sure they do that.
And the last thing before we continue this is, are we going to pick a stormwater consultant who has the ability to review this stuff, get it done, get it to the board in adequate time so we can act on the 7th? That's what I want to know.
And that'll be part of the discussion with the
Okay.
consultant, all right?
Okay, good.
How quickly they can do it.
I just have one other question.
Sure.
How the $2,400 consulting fee was determined, just if we don't know, and this is really understanding to the
Yeah.
process, if we don't know the scope and we don't know who's gonna be doing the review?
I would say that a new fee is
Well, we
gonna,
do know who's gonna be doing the review, and we review under the stormwater bylaw. So but now, you know, we've got the two open things with Tom Liddy's questions, but I don't think that those,
well,
asking for is a lot, though.
personally, I think we should just revisit this with regard to the stormwater consultant. I think we take a look at what they have for information.
Yeah, and maybe put it out
Just
to bid.
discuss it with the stormwater person, but we have to,
Sure, the
Have to
price
do
is
it
right.
quickly.
Yep.
Yeah.
all right?
Yeah, we don't wanna slow it down.
So let's look at it that way.
Yeah, because the person that we have assigned to the case is ready to go.
Okay, all right. But we have some other information. I just want to be sure that we can accommodate that,
Yes,
all right?
absolutely.
All right?
Okay, so
And
we're
seconded,
back-
we-
Take the votes. You,
I'm sorry, anybody else? We're going to vote this.
no, that's fine. When I'm back here on the 7th,
I might take the night off.
well, that's fine. Whatever.
Don't do that, Fred.
Don't do that. I've said enough.
we're hoping to have things ready to wrap.
Thank you.
No,
we still didn't vote.
we still vote.
All right, whatever.
I made a motion.
Second, all in
Second.
favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
So, official.
I wouldn't make a good attorney, would I, Bill?
Make a better attorney than me.
Have a good night.
Young, 18 Lowell Street.
I know.
Damn.
Take a seat.
Good, how are you? No, I was feeling lousy. I'll talk to you later.
She really says.
Of her. I know that. 11 o'clock both nights, total fiasco.
I'll tell you after the
Yes,
meeting.
okay, and John called me today. Danny.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, oh my gosh.
Those contacts.
What's that?
Five.
Yeah.
We can try.
Yeah. Well, that's why I said five.
Moving on.
Given that it's already 8 o'clock and we have lots of things to go through, we're going to try to implement our agent's
555.
555 rule. You get 5, we get 5, the audience gets 5. All right?
And then bye.
Minutes.
Yes.
Good evening.
Hi, good evening.
So you guys want to introduce yourselves?
Oh, 8.
Ladies first.
Hi, Jennifer Young Watts, property owner.
CJ Young. Dana Jr. And I'm Timothy Burke. I'm the architect for the project.
Great.
Yes.
Good evening.
I did the septic design, that's why I'm here.
Right.
All right.
Okay. So where are we at with this project? They've got a okay from the Board of Health. So what else do we
We're
have?
talking about the pilings they wanted to use, am I correct?
That's right. I
That we
submitted a
wanted the wood.
report for that, yes.
That we usually ask for the wood pilings, wherever you can do them, and they wanted to do.
So why don't you explain to us the foundation?
Sure, yes. I had my structural engineer look at using the wood piles
Yeah.
because that was the first choice. The issue that he found was that due to the size of the house, and this shows the side view, you can see based on its height and its depth, there's a lot of area that's subject to the wind load, which is a high, significant load on the house. And he found that the wood piles wouldn't accommodate that lateral load. So he came up with a scheme to use helical steel piles, so it's still on pilings. And then right below the grade level, there's a lattice of concrete that ties all these piles together, and that's what transfers all the load. It's a type of design that's recommended by FEMA for coastal foundations. And the helical piles, they're like augers, so they can be put in fairly precisely. They'll last as long as the wood piles would last. And it's going to achieve the goals of meeting the code for the lateral loads, and also it's less obtrusive, less of a noise, or it's done very quietly for all the neighbors. It would be a much better system. So that's why we would like permission to use that design for this particular project.
My concern was what DEP would say.
So Amy, just in this project, I don't know, do you have an actual plan that shows
I do,
you did before, where there was a footing?
So this is that grid that I was talking about of the concrete.
Right.
These are sonotube footings that come up out of the ground that support the house.
Yep.
And then this was a detail that showed a cross-section showing the helical piles, the concrete lattice, and then the support up to the wood framing of the house itself.
Right.
So as I mentioned, it is a system that's recommended by FEMA.
FEMA and DEP, though, are two different
Yeah,
things.
yeah. I understand.
That's all. I just don't want anyone to get in trouble.
Did this get a DEP number?
Yes,
Okay.
yes, it did. And we, after the hearing last time, we did run the foundation
Helical
design by the folks at CZM and DEP, and they did, they seem to concur that this design would be acceptable.
Oh, good, okay.
The other item we were asked to address was landscaping of the site.
Yes.
And we have submitted this plan. I did add some color to the one that was submitted, just to pop out. This would be mostly lawn area here, and then we have some screening plantings along this side, and foundation plantings here. All the plants are native plants and generally drought-resistant types of plants.
I'm sorry for interrupting, I can't see the list. Can you just a couple of examples, can you say them? Because other people can't see it like we can.
Only because I live fairly close, I want to see how beautiful it's going to be.
Yes, it will be quite beautiful.
We'll have whatever you want.
It's all good stuff, from what I can see.
Are they storm resistant?
Yeah, no, they're salt resistant.
Yes.
We'll make sure, we'll definitely make sure there's storms.
I think that one can swim.
Thank you, appreciate that.
You're welcome. No, we're very excited about this project and looking forward to sort of revitalizing a house that's sat empty now for quite a while.
Yes, it has.
Okay. Penny, you all set?
Yeah, my concern was with the pilings.
I'm delighted.
Richard? Good?
Happy.
Lisa?
I think it looks good.
Amy?
The project appears to meet the requirements of the Wetlands Protection Act and the Scituate bylaw. So, and we thank you for working through the different issues that were identified, and through the Board of Health, there was lots of tweaking that went on, is my understanding, with the Title V system. And at one point, there was an abutter who may be here tonight, wondering whether the work was in an easement that was on his property.
We're gonna get to the-
So we believe that was resolved, that actually there is no work on the abutter's property. But anyways, so those are my thoughts. Thank you.
Okay.
I would say that there does have to be a limit of work and buffers when the work is being done behind the house and on the southerly side, because there are neighbors there that we've got to be careful of.
The site plan has a complete limit of work.
Okay.
Yeah, that's just the
I'm sorry, I
landscape
did-
drawing.
okay.
There's a note right on it, Mount Sauk right on it.
So in the audience to speak to this? Anybody?
The
And your name is, sir?
I'm sorry, Lawrence Janino, 24 Lowell Street.
Yep.
Directly abutting the Young's property at 18 Lowell Street. Our only question at this particular point had to do with the notice of application, whether we had to have our name on that as well. But I understand that's been resolved. If you could elaborate on that just for my satisfaction as to what you found out, I would appreciate it.
Did that work through the Board of Health? Was that question posed to the Board of Health?
It was to the engineer, and the engineer produced documentation that showed that they did property line survey. And Dana, do you have the information to back this up? Can you describe what happened with that?
What's shown on the plan here. So, as you can see, here is the site in question. The site is actually Do you, small. can you, maybe you want to come over here and just take a look, sure. So what this is this is the site in question right here. This is 18 Lowell Street. This larger piece right here is the abutters land. It's kind of L-shaped, like this. And through the title research that we did, we found verbiage right here that I put right on here. This area right here, the entire lot, as far as I could tell from the deed research, is called out as an easement area for the benefit of Lot 7, which is the subject lot. Quote, to use Lot 6, this one here, the L-shaped one, for the keeping and maintenance of the septic system and for the entrance and exit of Lot 7, and also for the parking of motor vehicles, end quote, per document number. I put the recording information on that. So essentially, whoever wrote the easement language in the beginning, they can park on it and they can put a septic system wherever they need to on it, which isn't entirely reasonable, I think. But that's the way it was written, so that's what I quoted there. However, what our plan is to eliminate or abandon whatever is on this easement now for a septic system right now. We will abandon that and put the new septic system entirely on the subject lot. All right, so the tank, the septic tank right now, the existing one, is entirely on the lot already. And that is the portion where we're gonna excavate, pump it, excavate it, off-site, and be done with it. Okay. All right, so as far as any septic system work, there will be no work proposed on the easement area or on the abutting lot. Okay. Makes sense? Okay.
Is there any work proposed, so there's no work proposed on this plan on that easement site?
Correct.
Okay. So therefore, you wouldn't have to be party to that filing?
Understood. Okay, that's
Is that
great.
good?
All right.
Thanks, Dan.
Anybody else? Yes, sir.
I just have one question. I hadn't seen, hadn't the opportunity to take a look at the plant plan. If I could just take a quick look at this.
Okay,
Thank you.
Thank you.
enough.
Okay. I'm ready.
Yep.
I make a motion to close.
We have a second? All in favor?
Aye.
Great. Thank you.
Good.
Thank you. Thank you.
When are we gonna see this happening now?
Soon, can't get too long.
By midnight.
Thanks very much.
Yeah,
Thank you.
My kids are desperate to get back there.
Thank you.
No.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Frank, I'm just
Good
gonna
luck.
run out.
Thank you.
Sure.
Will you get told what is in here?
Somebody want to grab the Toll Brothers
Oh, I'll
crew out
bring it
there?
back and run out.
Unless Mr. Lisi's just going to wing that.
I'm here, baby.
See you later. Yeah, you too, thanks. Thank you very much.
Yeah, actually, can't we just do it with you? And
Why don't we just leave those guys out in the hall, Jeff?
I'm a more likable sort.
that house is gonna look beautiful. Too big, of course, but beautiful.
We just decided that Jeff was going to represent you guys tonight. You can go home.
Yeah, Paul.
They had no choice with the one that was put behind them, but the butter.
I try to get water, all
Say
the
that
water's
again?
out of the machine now.
Really?
I have some.
Yeah, last night at the town meeting, somebody had to score every time we were getting updates.
It's a good move.
Wasn't me. I would never know that the score was 4-1, there were 2 people on.
That's great. I love it, Rich. I think that threat ended now.
We're giving Penny and Amy a 2-minute break here. That won't cut into your 5 minutes.
Oh, 3 minutes.
Yeah, that's okay.
That's all we need. Just yes, yes, yes. That's all we want.
Hey, on that prior hearing, can make sure Rich, if he's gonna vote, that he does that certification.
mean Paul.
Paul, right. And certification on the
Mullen.
Mullen Wall.
Carol, did you get that?
No, I wasn't listening.
So,
Yeah,
the
Paul
concern
just-
was
Paul
that
just has to watch the tape
Paul
and then
Paris
just submit a
wasn't,
letter, that's all.
Not that I could find.
well, he missed this one
Tonight.
tonight.
But this was just supposed to be nothing,
No, but regarding the Martins, the, Border Street.
67 Border.
Oh, I don't know about that one.
Thank you.
Yep.
Ah, the toll bars. Frank.
I just want to send an email to,
Oh, carrying on.
um,
Oh, my head's going for a minute. Here comes Lisa. Oh, Amy is back. Oh, Amy's not back yet.
How's Hemrock looking these days?
Still a little rough up at the north end.
Say again?
A little rough up at the north end.
Yeah.
The rest of it's getting pretty good.
It was always rough in the north end, right?
Talk to her, she
I
lives
thought you
there.
said it looks like the north end.
No, it looks like Vietnam.
I said,
It's still
what's
pretty rough.
there a trash
How far
disposal
west are you
issue?
over there?
Oh, I'm in right in the middle, I'm in the war zone.
She's in the north end,
Oh,
I'm
you
in the
are.
middle, and Paul's in the south.
I'm 242 on the ocean side, where, like, there's no houses on the marsh side,
Yep,
so you get it from both sides.
sure.
It's like being the Flintstones.
Yeah, I think you want to be out of there during big storms.
Even for us, and I'm in the middle. I'm in the middle, and I had water right up to the floor, first time.
Oh, you get more water in the January storm where the river rose so high.
That's right.
Yeah.
January was worse, yep.
I thought January was, yeah, that was pretty bad.
But we see,
worse.
we didn't get any damage because it was more north rather than northeast. So
That's true.
that's
It
where it
was
really
almost the river more
Fourth
than the
Cliff.
ocean
Yeah.
that got us, where I am. And actually, Paul got inundated too, which he never gets inundated.
really?
Yeah.
Oh, share the wealth.
Absolutely. Here we go.
Nice in the summer, but I think I'll stay where I am.
If you get water, we are in trouble.
We are in big trouble if I get water.
Okay. Okay, we can
Amy,
go.
just back one, I want to make sure that I just sent you an email, and Carol, that we get Paul Paris to watch this meeting, read the Martin rule, because he's going to be missing, I mean, both Border Street, Toll Brothers, all that stuff in order to remain
Current.
And able to vote.
able to vote, he needs to do that.
Right.
Thank
Hi,
you.
Bill
Good evening.
Orenberg. I'm with Jeff DeLisa and Scott Michelli, Toll Brothers, and Mark Manganello. And since the last time we met, and again, I guess just want to reconfirm with the commission again, is the review letter from Amy Ball had come in, and I don't think you'd had a full chance to review that. And at our last meeting, we said Amy made 2 suggested conditions, which we were amenable to. So I think Mark wants, if there's any questions or anything, to avail that, so that I think that I want to confirm, if that's all information in, that's fine. We anticipate tomorrow night that we're going to vote and close the planning board meeting. And so with an eye towards it, if we are all set, what we'd like to do is, if we're all set here, to come back on April 23rd, and we'd like to close and vote this at that time. So, but at any rate, Mark, why don't you, I don't know if you have questions to start, Mark.
Sure. Penny?
When you say close and vote, you mean you want to close on the 23rd and vote what?
No, well, why don't we, after Mark, let's discuss what the
Okay.
parameters are.
I'm just a little,
Because what the issue is we anticipate the Toll Brothers have everyone queued up to start construction, and one of the parameters, you do have that 60-day appeal period. And they have to wait on that 60-day appeal period, so at this juncture, from a planning board standpoint, nothing's changing, it's done. But I don't know, Frank, do you want Mark to address those things, or do you
Yeah,
want
why
to
don't we
ask
just,
questions?
why don't we just run through them real quick?
Run through which?
This is, was a couple of comments from Amy, we want to just hit on those, if you're,
Yes.
if you're ready to, I mean, I don't think they were significant.
No, there were suggested special conditions.
Conditions, that was all.
In her report, and I think we talked about them last time and acknowledged that we were good with them. And I can track them down in this letter and read them out. The commission, I think the bigger issue we had to resolve was just the timeliness of this letter arriving and making sure that the commission had a chance to review it, and that Amy Walkie had a chance to review it, and if any of you had any final questions.
Yeah, because it came the day of the meeting.
That's right.
Yeah.
And I agree with her conditions, and, you know, I think everything's looking good from our standpoint.
Yeah, that's how I felt like the commission responded last time.
Yeah, I reviewed it, I was fine with it.
Lisa?
Yes, no problem.
Amy, can you think of anything else we want to give them for directive before the next meeting?
No, I don't. I mean, I think continue and we can think about maybe some things to think about and perhaps close at the next meeting.
Well, okay, well, let's get in the audience, let's see if there's any questions. Anybody here for Toll Brothers that has any additional questions? It's been a number of meetings, that's for sure, with a lot of different questions and answers, and so it seems like this is winding down, so we just want to sort of get to the.
Yeah, I think the big thing was that we hadn't had a chance to really review that last letter. There were no surprises in it, but that was the big thing, and we're trying to make sure that everybody gives us enough warning on communications. That was really the only reason I think we made sure that you had to come back. You were going to anyway, because planning wasn't meeting until tomorrow, but.
Correct.
Right.
No, I was happy with it.
Okay, Bill?
So just procedurally, and that's one of the things we've been doing with the planning board, seeing that it's a complex issue, is what we'd like to do is, again, we, with the planning board, are allowed to participate. We drafted a set of conditions, they reviewed it, and we worked it out so that at the meeting tomorrow, it should be working things, we get to the final line and everything's everyone agreed upon. It's just adopted by reference. But one of the important things, I know sometimes the commission usually will close a meeting, then discuss things, but there's no opportunity for a give and take. And in a project of this complexity, if there's issues, you know, we'd like to be able to do that. So one of the things that I'd suggest is, again, if we could see conditions, give our input, and I'm not talking about Amy and the agent and ourselves can talk about it. I'm not talking about ex parte communications or anything. To get towards that so that at the next meeting, we can actually sit down and say, okay, we want to vote this order. Here are the conditions. You guys have a copy. We have a copy. You have your discussion. And if we said, well, we'd have the suggestion without, then the commission makes their decision. But I'd like to do that. Then if the commission's ready, then you say, okay, we close the meeting and we've already discussed all the conditions. Let's adopt the order, conditions 1 through 37. And it's done. But in other words, from our standpoint, I don't have a situation where a lot of times in order of conditions, they're more straightforward, that's on a number of issues, because one of the things that the commission may not be aware of is there's an exhaustive amount of conditions and regulatory requirements from our special permit and stormwater permit from the planning board, of which, if you guys see this, so like, in other words, when you see that there's 96 conditions, and so there's a huge amount of things where, in other words, I think you're gonna find that the vast majority of things are covered, and so.
Our conditions, the way I look at it, will strictly be looking at the wetlands issues, what our purview is. That, your replication, how we really want to see that, some of the drainage ditches that, the vegetation in there are natural, maybe some new critters will come live there, some cleanup of areas. To me, we are supposed to just zero in on what our purview is in our conditions, and what their conditions are, that's their purview.
I understand.
Yeah.
The only thing that's a little bit different with this one is that we held stormwater hearings with them.
Yes.
And part of the stormwater structures and things like that, we've had input into how those are constructed and vegetated and.
Well, that's what I was saying, the
and whatnot.
vegetation
So.
of the ditches, the
Sure.
stormwater.
It would seem to me, if this is all gonna happen tomorrow night, that the conditions you're going to accept from planning will then be available for us to see. Would that be correct?
No, that's what I'm just saying.
Yeah, I'm making sure I understand this, so that it would seem to me it would be pretty easy then to make sure that we're just not giving duplicit conditions on the stormwater, if that's where we had a joint meeting.
Just a couple of things on that, just a few points, is so the planning board doesn't ordinarily circulate draft conditions and go back and forth as kind of a mainstay. They're making a kind of a different protocol here because of what we have. And that's the same thing we're asking you guys to do as well. As far as the stormwater issue is concerned, I think Amy's probably been a part of a department meeting that I think occurred on Monday to kind of corral conditions which have made it into the draft that we've received and which the planning board will be talking about. So I hope that will make you guys feel a little more comfortable. Finally, well, that's pretty much it.
Yeah.
I just wanted to make the point that, we're pretty much already there, and
Well, I think a lot of
you guys can do this.
A lot of what, I'm sorry, Lisa,
No.
why don't you go ahead and, do you have any input you want to throw at
No,
this?
pretty much what was said is fine. I mean, I think things are going really smoothly, and I don't see how we're gonna run into any problems.
So we've both been working with the same consultants.
Right.
And essentially, we've got the recommendations from the consultants, and I haven't heard anything that we're in disagreement with Amy's Ball's letter. And I think that pretty much the input that we got from Horsley Witten will be part of our orders. And I don't know, Amy, you correct me if I'm wrong, we're gonna be relying heavily on that and the pieces that have already come back from the planning board. Just wondering, can we get to that point where we review these things with them, have the opportunity to discuss it with the applicant, is what they're asking. I mean, typically, as you point out, we usually write our orders, and it's not that we go into a room and then the smoke comes out the chimney. It's usually an effect.
White or
of-
black?
It's an effect of the discussions at the meeting. And if it hasn't been part of the discussion or brought up by the commission, it really shouldn't be in the orders. If it's issues that have been discussed by the commission and been brought to your attention, then those typically are the things that should be in those orders, so that you're not blindsided and we're not imposing things that aren't
Sure,
aren't
so
part
that's
of that.
all we're asking is we can see these, so that, in other words, we're not sitting here asking for commas and word additions and all this stuff, if we can offer those to you in advance, and you already know our commentary, that's all.
Well, all right,
Because
so-
we're relying on Mark.
So let's,
This is my thought, is that we continue as soon as possible tonight, since we have a packed agenda, to the next meeting, in which time we'll formulate with the commission. You guys can, send me what your thoughts are, I can send you what my thoughts are as far as special conditions. Otherwise, we do have a standard order of conditions, which you're welcome to take a look at that now. But then on the meeting on the 23rd, we can discuss those in your presence, and then we will go write them and distribute them to you in draft before we would sign them typically at the following meeting. So that would be within the 21 days. So that would be May 7th is when you guys would actually be presented, because within that couple of weeks, the applicant can review and draft, make comment, we can finalize them, and you guys would sign them the first meeting in
Well, why-
May.
I'm just curious why we couldn't do this week, write up in anything that, I know we have standard ones, you do the technical ones and stuff, but like I have a list of, just the stuff I want to make sure gets done, the turtle squeak, the this, the that, and do it and send it out in the next few weeks, and then
Well, we only-
So in the next
Then
10
we would
days, we
discuss.
can gather our thoughts and make sure everyone's got their input on what they want to see for special conditions. Then we'll work on the wording and put it out there in draft form so that the whole team can take a look at it in advance of you signing it. And then if they want to chime in with opinions or whatever, but they'll already know what to expect, because at next meeting, we'll be presenting, what you guys are thinking.
Well,
oh, see, I thought we were gonna do that tonight,
right.
but
I don't think that we
that
have,
was what we had said I had said at the last meeting. I don't
that we're
know.
gonna identify all the special conditions
That we
tonight.
would discuss, throw out and then have them ready for the next meeting.
Well, I think we have some rough ideas, but until we look at the planning board and make sure that, it's a big project. I wanna make sure that we're thorough and don't miss anything.
I understand that, but the planning board's meeting tomorrow night, and their conditions are coming out tomorrow night?
But
hopefully, yeah.
Is that?
it's my understanding from Karen that it's an ongoing process, and it
Uh-oh.
will go on
Uh-oh.
beyond tomorrow night, so.
Well,
The special permit document also doubles as the stormwater permit as well. So as far as stormwater permit issues are concerned, that really is not part of your order of conditions. Your order of conditions is simply wetland protection.
Even though the
So-
stormwater application was filed with us, Jeff?
We filed with both parties.
Right.
Okay, so they'll
So they're
issue the
granting,
stormwater.
Karen told me they're the stormwater permit granting
Okay, good.
authority. Their document literally says, I've
That's the
seen it
title of it.
already, approval, the special permit, and stormwater
Stormwater
permit.
permit.
So that helps to streamline you guys a lot, and certainly you don't want to be trying to set stormwater conditions that might somehow conflict with the stormwater conditions that were already on
well,
the
we've
other
been trying to
side.
avoid that
Exactly.
Right.
So you have input, you've had input, the plans have been revised based on your input, revised based on the planning board's input. It's all there, everything's been reviewed. They're the ones who are issuing that permit. You guys are good with that. So this is strictly order of conditions, and hopefully that will allow you to streamline your process of
It'll
it.
be order of conditions, but we'll also incorporate by reference certain things that we want to carry through with the order. And that would be things like the O&M plan and the long-term pollution prevention plan, things like that that are related to the stormwater. So that's true to some extent, but not 100%.
Right, so, back to their request to get this, so that we get to the next meeting with them having a good idea of where we are with our orders, so that we can hopefully close this and move forward. I think the big difference of their request is that if we have all the information in place, can we not only close it, but can we get orders in the same evening?
No, I would definitely not recommend that.
Why not?
Workload in the office
Oh.
would be one driver that I would say. And we've just recently run into complications on Ann Vinyl, for instance, with closing and issuing the same night. So, I mean, we're not talking like there's a big gap. There's 2 weeks in between the meeting dates. So I think if we meet on the 23rd and close an issue on the 7th, we're less than a month away.
Let's close
you know?
on the 23rd and we will issue on the 7th.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. That's
Okay.
not far away at all.
All
3
right.
weeks. So, at which time, we're not even confident that they'll be through the planning board, so
Well, I thought we said earlier it doesn't matter if we're through the planning board.
it doesn't.
Okay, then, all right, so we're clear on that. But I guess what I don't understand, if you're closing the meeting anyhow, what's the difference in voting it?
You know what happened to 90 Ann Vinyl?
Just gives us more opportunity to be thorough and make sure that we don't miss anything. But we're willing, actually, in addition, we're willing to distribute and draft, not only to you guys, the commissioners, but to the client, the applicant, so that we'll be getting input from many parties. So, you know, we have a lot going on, and I just, with such a big project, I would feel more comfortable if we stuck to that schedule. I mean, it's been going on for how long now?
No,
So
no, I
a couple of weeks.
understand that. I just was under the,
Well, let me.
That's not what I was under the
Okay, 'cause
Let me
I
say-
understood it
Let me just ask
differently.
one thing, and I understand the administrative burden you're under is, I'm saying not myself, but Mark could said, being the wetland specialist, he could adopt Scituate standard conditions, incorporate what Amy said, and do the first draft and send it to you.
No.
no, because there are conditions, so we have to do them.
Well, I mean, all they're offering is
Yeah, no, I
a set
understand
of
that.
draft.
To get the ball rolling
Yeah.
on a similar project, you know, with.
No, we're just trying to be
application.
responsive. You say there's an administrative problem, we offered to help with it. And if the answer is no, you don't want us to help with it, then,
No, but oftentimes, I mean, in other boards, if we were, say, in front of the ZBA, oftentimes the decision's written by the attorney and then reviewed by the,
In planning, we offered the first set of conditions
We
on
did
this
it.
project,
yeah.
so, just saying.
Well, we kind of have to go with what the office wants, how they want to do it. I think.
well, I'd like to see this move along as quick, at the same time, make sure that we dot our i's and cross our t's. I definitely want a dialogue between the applicant and the office, so that we can have that all ironed out, so that it's not an ongoing issue.
Frank, it's no different than any other order we do. I mean, we close and we do the orders the next following 2 weeks.
Well, sometimes in cases where there's
We
been,
have done both. We've closed and.
but I understand it also creates issues as
Yeah.
well, Carol, I do understand that. We have made exceptions, typically they're smaller projects.
Understood.
Yeah.
It's somebody that was a tight time frame, and whatever the case may be, we've agreed to, right.
Yeah, well, that's.
Yeah, I mean, well, you know what, if in 10 days we feel like we're in such a great spot with it, you guys can make your decision then to issue.
Okay.
You know, if things are that great, you know what I mean? I would definitely be supportive of that, although, again, I feel like it taxes the office quite a bit.
I understand.
And we're under a lot of pressure.
There's a lot going on there. There's no
Yes.
doubt about it.
Yeah, on the other hand, this project's been kicking around for a year.
On the other hand,
It's
it,
time-
it,
it's
you
time
got,
to get involved now.
it got,
Actually, it's been 2 years, but
it got
that's...
It
submitted.
kind of is, actually.
Well, it got submitted,
Not on this commission, but.
well, it got submitted a couple of years ago, and then it went MIA for about a year, and then it came back to the town, so it goes both ways. I think it started as a totally different project, and
So is the answer is we're gonna try to do what we can to get these things, we can review them. We'll be back on April 23rd, and if for some reason you're in a good situation, then maybe we can close it and take action, but if you're not, then
Close it, you'll have the conditions on the 7th.
Right,
We should be able to close no matter what,
yes,
Should.
we'll close,
on the 23rd,
let's,
unless you do something bad out there. I mean.
yeah, you guys change things on us, I
Yeah,
don't know.
no. So we
So-
should close next meeting and then order your conditions.
Okay.
That's,
So what would it hurt? Why don't we just have them submit the information?
I don't see a
Well,
problem.
that's
Right, I
up to
don't-
Amy. I can't.
They can submit, doesn't mean
can always
we're
close
gonna
it.
follow the
That's,
direction.
that's what I would
Just
say.
see- Just let's see
Actually, I
what they
agree with
have.
you.
you want,
How about Amy
we
Ball?
said, we'll pay for Amy Ball to do it, if you have an administrative problem.
no,
All right. The boss said no. It's
Okay.
her office. I'm not gonna get into.
no, but, I mean, on one token, Mark, if you have other projects, similar projects, you wanna send me a couple of sample orders of conditions, we might take some language and make it easier for us, that would be,
Yeah, that's all I was thinking,
helpful.
was just
Sure.
see
You can
what
take
the
what you want,
verbiage is.
discard what you
it's
don't want.
not a committed thing. Yeah, I've actually reached out to other commissions.
Okay, there we
Joe
go.
Grady, Duxbury,
Yeah.
you know, Hingham, the other Cohasset, yeah, some of the other Norwell commissions that have, big projects like this.
Okay.
We're hoping to model it, we're not trying to create new difficult situations
Yeah,
by any means.
a lot of them should actually be pretty similar.
I would think so,
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay.
I think we finally got where they wanted to go.
All right. Mr.
And then it's
Bjork,
up to the rest of the board. If you have something,
We got it.
yeah,
okay,
We got
I
it.
just want to say,
Amy.
does that have to be an agenda item if you're going to do conditions the same night? Just to make sure it goes on the agenda if they need it.
What, if it goes on the agenda, we're gonna,
Does it have to be on the agenda to do the orders that night or not? I'm just asking a question.
Well, why not put it on the agenda that way, and if it doesn't
Well,
happen?
no.
it's-
No, it doesn't.
no,
Or does it?
you're on the agenda and we'll see where we are
No,
before
but
the
it-
agenda's issued.
It's a good
Well, we
question.
Right,
should
so then
know
we'll just-
before we post the agenda.
Yeah, right, we'll know,
when we
Yeah.
post the agenda, we'll know.
We'll leave it open, yeah.
yeah. you-
Okay.
All right, I make a motion to continue Toll Brothers to April 23rd at 6:20.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Heap, 62 Glades, they requested a continuation, no Board of Health. Wanna do that one, Penny? Can-
Yes,
Amy,
I'm
would that go to
sorry.
the next meeting? 62
How
Glades?
is our next meeting looking?
Not, well, there's a lot of continued, not too bad. 1, 2, 3, 4,
We wanna
5,
start getting away from 10 hearing meetings,
6.
Right.
or you guys are gonna quit on us, so.
Well, but we gotta eventually hear them, whether it's there or not.
Just answer the question.
No, I mean, so,
Would
it
you-
would be good, I'm not confident that that one will go on in 10 days, to tell you the truth, but we might as
on
well
the
put them
7th.
on and they can continue again.
Okay, so I'll make a motion to continue Heap, 62 Glades Road to April 23rd at 6:20.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Diamond Development, 53 Border Street.
7.
62.
Good evening.
Yorkland, for the record. Hopefully I'll be the quickest hearing of the night.
You can be fast?
The what?
No.
It's the quickest hearing of the night, I think.
Oh, that's what drove that.
When we left the last meeting, there were two unresolved issues that we knew of. One was the Board of Health had to complete their review of the septic design, which I think Amy will tell you they've done that, and we've got notification of that. And the other issue was basically the polyline on the plan shows 14,600 feet of disturbance on the stormwater. So we're not under the stormwater bylaw. And I think since then, I've had a conversation with Amy, and she wanted to wait until the Zoning Board of Appeals hopefully will act on this on the 19th. And I know the regulation says that we have to file for all special permits first and variances. So we have filed it and we met that requirement. She had asked me whether we would keep the hearing open until the zoning board actually took action on that. And I think that's going to be a pretty quick hearing on the 19th, because we're taking a house that doesn't conform to the side setback and moving it so that it's totally conforming on all setbacks. So we're prepared to do that, and I don't think there was any other outstanding issues.
Penny?
Are you saying that you don't have to do a stormwater on that? Oh, yeah, zoning's doing that. Is that what it was?
No. If a stormwater permit is required, if something changes in the future, if we go over the 15,000 feet and kick in the stormwater, then it will be...
So you're under it?
We're
Yeah,
under it, yes,
14.6.
14.6.
Oh, I gotta go measure that.
You can measure it, and it's by design. I mean, we were over it to begin with. We actually modified the plan at the last hearing
Okay.
and pulled the grading in, which I can point it out to you, but it's on the left-hand side of the plan. We pulled it in about 30 feet so that we would meet that requirement. If somebody purchases this house and decides that they want to do more than what we have proposed on the plan, then they're free to come forward and request a stormwater permit. If that happens, potentially, once the zoning board acts, if there are no other public hearings involved, conservation would then be the one that would be involved in issuing that permit, because it would most likely involve work that would be in the buffer zone. But if that's not the case, they could potentially get through to the planning board if there were other public hearings involved. So, but our design right now is to be under that so that we don't have to meet that requirement. Although we are sensitive to the stormwater out there, we're not changing drainage patterns or anything like that. We think it's going to be a better situation because we're at the house location where it was before at the top of the coastal bank. That's now all going to be basically just leveled off, and that'll be a planted area. So that's going to stop all the stormwater down.
Nice native plantings.
That's all on
Up
there.
there.
Yep. It's all in there. So that's about it, I guess.
So you're requesting a continuance till,
The 23rd.
Richard, do you have anything?
I'm good.
Lisa?
I'm sorry, what did you say about the Board of Health?
Board of Health has approved the septic.
Okay, thank you.
We were waiting for that at the last
Couldn't
meeting.
use the
Right, I
same
just was looking at my
septic.
notes, yeah, okay.
I'm just
Thank you.
curious. You couldn't use the same septic that's already out there?
No, and the septic that's there is down near the top of the coastal bank anyways, so this one pushes it way up the hill. We're trying to get everything as far away as we can from the resource areas, and the only area that they could pass the perk test was up at the top of the lot, because they hit refusal and stuff down at the bottom. And actually what happened was, before we were involved in the project, there was a septic system that was designed and approved by the Board of Health using the perk test in the location where we have the system. And we've just done basically a redesign to relocate the tanks, because instead of pumping them from the old house and pumping it up the hill, now we're going to be able to do it all in front of the house. So it's the same basic leaching area, just we relocated the tanks to move them further away from the resource. And we had to go for a full approval from the Board of Health for that again.
I still don't like the fill, but, that's me.
And again, most of that's contained within the front of the house. I think we did the best to not have it behind the house. So it should all be contained by the foundation itself.
Amy? I mean, they requested a continuance, but if there's any other input.
Yeah, I mean, well, I sent you guys some comments, so you have my comments. But yeah, let's see, continue. Sounds good to me.
Do we want to add anything else to request for information at the next meeting?
Well, I mean, just for possible special conditions, just to throw them out there so Steve isn't shocked, would be roof dry wells to capture roof runoff, require recreation of the undisturbed buffer in the area where the new lawn is proposed in exchange for the disturbance where the new house is going, which is basically what he's doing anyways. Maybe add a construction pad at the beginning of the property, which would be standard for new construction.
Yeah.
So I don't think those are deal breakers.
Okay.
I mean, there is a substantial amount of fill, and so one of the comments that the peer review engineer did say was that, you know, he was concerned about change of drainage patterns from the fill, but believe that the applicant has demonstrated that, to the best of their ability, it will not, based on their grading changes. So technically, I mean, I think meets requirements of Wetlands Protection Act, but does not strictly meet the requirements of the Scituate bylaw.
No.
But in exchange, they're offering up buffer enhancement and recreating the buffer, no disturb buffer, so.
I don't know how to shut that off.
Carol, what did you ask? What did you say? Do we have?
Lenny went out there again, and there's a 350.
I don't know what to do. I don't know how to shut it off. Before we leave, turn it on.
Oh, my God.
New phones are just tough.
It's a camera, that's the only reason I have it. For the dog, for the puppy.
I'm sorry, so we have an additional consultant fee?
Of 350.
So where are we? What is that for additional wetlands or?
For Tom Liddy.
That was the follow-up letter that he wrote after the first letter.
Okay.
So it went back and forth a couple of times.
Okay.
And he went back out there, I think, well, actually, I don't know, I'm not so sure he went back out there
Okay.
to verify the flags that they moved.
All right. So I guess anybody in the audience? Yes, sir.
Jim Spellman, 49 Water Street. I'm actually a little bit flabbergasted at the conversation this evening. You will recall there were more than 2 issues that were left open at the end of our last hearing. Mr. Chairman, you...
Well, can you tell us what they are, Mr. Spellman?
The one that was left standing, the other one was left standing was the actual delineation of the coastal bank. I'd like to remind you all what Mr. Borkland is proposing here. He intends to raise and remove a 175-year-old post and beam home with potential historic interest to the town. It sits on an environmentally sensitive, non-conforming lot abutting the fragile coastal wetlands that involved. The town would surely permit him at least a modest rebuild on the present already disturbed footprint, but he chooses not to do so, arguing that his proposal would be further from the coastal bank and utilize already disturbed portions of the lot. And he's argued before you that rebuilding on the present location poses undue hardships, most particularly having to contend with a concrete slab on which he says the house is built. In order to construct this house, Mr. Borkland intends to hammer or blast into solid bedrock for a lateral depth of approximately 20 to 25 feet to a vertical depth of about 10 feet. He proposes to build foundation walls extending from that base to a height of 8 feet above grade in the front and nearly 18 feet toward the rear, just to establish the house of the height of his proposed first floor. Town building code would allow him to create a structure as high as 40 feet above this. In order to build this and to create the septic system, which he has variously changed about, and the leaching field that's designed, he proposes to cut down or jeopardize virtually every mature tree on the lot. He intends to truck in, by his own estimation, over 1,000 cubic yards of fill to a depth of 8 feet across whole portions of the lot. Our calculations suggest it could be more. In order to accomplish this, he proposes to build retaining walls along both the eastern and western portion property lines to hold back the fill, and then essentially regrade the whole 1 acre parcel right to the top of and even over running the coastal bank. And all this time, Mr. Borkland argues before you that his proposal will create what he calls an environmental enhancement to this fragile piece of property. Nothing, I think, could seem more preposterous. By his own admission, Mr. Borkland's claims for environmental sensitivity rest on 3 factors. Number 1, he's going to upgrade his septic system, which is, of course, irrelevant, as it would require any new construction. Number 2, he says he's going to use a previously disturbed portion of the property. If you've visited the site, you know this is untrue. In fact, Lucas Environmental has pointed out that the new site, and this is their quote, disturbs the only portion of the buffer to the coastal bank that is naturally vegetated under existing conditions, and again quoting, makes changes to the drainage patterns of the property. Lucas Environmental makes his point as clearly as it can, again quoting, our concern with the location of the proposed house relates to the alteration of the 50-foot buffer to the top of the coastal bank. We know that Scituate regulations seek, whenever possible, to leave this barrier in a continuous, unaltered natural state. Lucas asks pointedly why the footprint of the existing house can't be utilized since it's already disturbed. We ask the same thing. And then Lucas makes its position entirely clear. It is our opinion, they quote, I quote, that the commission has the authority by the bylaw to approve this alteration to the buffer strip, but also has the authority to prohibit it. The commission should consider, this is their quote, not only past precedents, but also how future projects will be reviewed in making a decision on this project. In other words, by approving this project, you'd not only needlessly be risking the erosion of a fragile stretch of wetland barrier, bank, and vegetation which is presently undisturbed, but you will literally be eroding the authority of this commission to hold to these strict standards in the future. Number 3, and lastly, Mr. Borkland says he's placing this new structure further from the coastal bank. And Mr. Chairman, this is where my objection from the last meeting comes in. As the commission knows, I've been bothered by this delineation of the coastal bank nearest the present structure. I've asked it to be re-scrutinized now in each of the last 2, now the 3rd meeting. I solicited the professional opinion of former Northeastern University professor emeritus Peter Rosen, who's considered by many to be one of the state's foremost experts on coastal geology and coastal bank delineation. Dr. Rosen is prepared to testify that the coastal bank delineation at the left of the present site plan is inaccurate, perhaps significantly so. I ask again that this line be reviewed for accuracy. As it hasn't been done, I submit that no decision in the affirmative could be possibly made in this project tonight, although it sounds like we're looking for an extension. The information before you needs to be accurate before any decision is made, and I continue to make that point. If the proposed building site is no further from the wetland than the coastal bank, as I believe will be shown, then Mr. Borkland's only remaining argument for placing a new structure elsewhere on the property has to be tossed aside too, along with his many other misrepresentations. Mr. Borkland has consistently distorted facts to suit his purpose. There is no concrete slab under the house, and he knows this. Wetlands flags on the site were deliberately moved and removed and he knows this. The delineation of the coastal bank is disputable. There are no credible barriers to rebuilding on the present site, and no credible arguments that the property would be environmentally enhanced by moving the dwelling anywhere else, and he knows this. And now, add to this Mr. Borkland's position on the stormwater regulations. I find it curious that his calculations keep him just under the 15,000, but there's a whole other regulation which has to do with slope, and it's clear that he sited his house clearly in the middle of the slope of greater than 4 to 1, which would, again, initiate stormwater regulations. He's consistently said these regulations don't apply to him or to this project. He knows full well that he sited this property directly in the flow lines of considerable drainage basin over ledge that floods our basement and the marshland with every significant rainstorm. He knows that both times that Lucas Environmental has asked for comment, it has contested this claim that stormwater regulations should not apply. Now he's providing you with calculations that suggest that he's just under the need to do so, but he's also made it clear that if he can't win this case, he's almost frantic to get it out of your hands and before the planning board. It seems pretty clear to me that he's desperate that this board not be the one to examine the issue. As you know, he's already made a pitch to ZBA in a hearing you scheduled for next week. I have a copy of the letter. In accordance with the Scituate general bylaws, he says, stormwater issues may be discussed as part of the public hearing on this project. So whereas here, in this hearing, he's telling you, hey, it's not going to be an issue, I'm underneath. There he's saying, hey, if it's got to happen, I'm going to let you handle it. I find myself insulted by this, and I believe you should be too. Mr. Borkland shows a deliberate intent to skirt regulations that he finds inconvenient, regulations that are designed to preserve and protect the environment and the nature of this town. In this case, regulations for which this board is clearly the most obvious authority. In doing so, I believe he shows a flagrant disrespect for each of you and the work you do. You have an opportunity here to push back. And I respectfully submit that you have an obligation to do so, if for no other reason than so as not to set dubious precedent for the future. You have an invitation here from no less authority than Tom Liddy at Lucas Environmental to say that you need not approve this project. There's absolutely no credible argument that this proposal is environmentally better for the site, for the neighborhood, or for the Gulf River. There is, in fact, every argument that it is considerably more harmful. And the fact is, he has a perfectly acceptable alternative. By rebuilding on the present footprint, no trees need to be cut down. Little or no fill needs to be trucked onto the site, and none of the still undisturbed vegetative barrier to the wetlands needs to be compromised. You have the right, and I respectfully submit the obligation, to say that this project should not proceed. You can stop this project here, now. Please do. I thank you for your time.
Thank you. Okay. So we're gonna have to continue this anyways. So we're continuing this hearing till,
I'm making the motion to, can I make the motion?
Sure.
To continue 53 Border Street to April 23rd at 6:20.
Second.
all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
A quick question, what will happen to this issue of stormwater drainage?
Well, it's going to go before the ZBA, and then we'll take a look at the plans and calculations to see if we concur. Do you have a copy of your letter? Do we have a?
I would like to give you one, and I also have just one this time.
Sure.
And just in support of my contention.
So we've already kind of continued it, but you're welcome to submit it.
Just, I am, again, asking that we approve the coastal bank.
Yep.
One day later, and several days later than that, all different. I'm not arguing accurate, I'm not
Sure.
arguing right or wrong.
Thank you.
Just inaccurate.
Got it.
And in that packet is a copy of the opinion of your expert?
No. No, I'm only saying at this point that I can say with authority that he believes them to be inaccurate and those will show up. If we want to take it to that, I can certainly provide it.
Very good.
Thank you. Berwick, Lot 2, Torrey's Lane. Good evening.
Good evening. For the record, Gregory Morse Engineering. This was a notice of intent that was submitted back in February for construction of a new single-family home at Lot 2, Torrey's Lane. I presented this project to the commission about 2 weeks ago at this point. The commission asked for some additional information on the site by way of having a wetlands peer review conducted at the site. The commission, since that time, had retained Ibis Environmental, who I understand has been to the site, reviewed the wetlands, and submitted a report documenting his findings. As you recall from the plan, this is a single-family home project. The property line here is shown in bold. Torrey's Lane is at the left side of the page. The wetland here is in blue. It's a local bylaw wetland only. It was not a state-regulated wetland, but one that was identified under the local bylaw by Brad Holmes, a professional wetland scientist. Extending off of that is the 50-foot buffer zone and 100-foot buffer zone. The house is located outside the 100-foot buffer, but between the 100 and 50-foot buffer, we are doing some grading work. We had also requested permission to do some work inside of the 50-foot buffer. That work inside of the 50-foot buffer was specifically to remove a stockpile of soil that was there. I went to the site, I took a couple pictures. You'll see that this site, has a history. This used to be where Alan Wheeler kept garbage trucks. It was a dump area at one point. There's a kind of an exposed stockpile, and you'll notice that I've included erosion controls around it, and we'd be going in, eliminating this pile. You'll see that there's a piece of a concrete pipe in the pile, and then restoring that area with a wildlife seed mix. It's not going to be part of the lawn, but it's really just to remove that pile. As far as the wetlands piece goes, I'm hoping to close out the request for an order of conditions. I believe you have all of the information you need to act on an order of conditions for this site. Secondarily, we have to talk about stormwater with respect to this site. But if we can address any outstanding wetland issues first, I would appreciate the opportunity to do that.
Okay.
Not isolated. Well, we got the report back today. I got it from Ibis. So I'm trying to look at it and, I don't know if I have any questions. I'm not sure.
Sure. So I...
Go ahead.
Same thing. I was working all day. I never had a chance to really review it.
Yeah, we need time to review this.
Well, the only thing it says is that there's a flag that was in, like one flag at the other end of the, I don't know if any of you have been out to the site, but the wetlands is pretty minimal.
Sure. By way of the record, I had requested a copy of that report. I have not been provided one. I have not seen it. But from what I understand, there was one flag. I didn't get it. By the end of the day, I hadn't received it. There was one flag on the back side of this isolated wetland. that I think was recommended to be moved. It in no way changes the setbacks to our limit of work. It's on the back side of the wetland. It's off locus, actually. It's on the town of Scituate piece of land.
Is the pile that you see in there, is that what you were calling the gravel pile last?
Yeah.
So that's the only spot that you have to take?
Inside the 50, that's the pile that we're removing.
They don't have to touch that pile.
Don't have to.
No, I
But
understand.
You'd like to remove it. If you went out to that site, you'd see that this whole site's been altered.
Oh, yeah, no, I know where the site is. I just wanted to know, is that what you were talking about?
Yes.
When you were here before?
And this wetlands was probably created by somebody that dug this thing deeper.
Sure. Well, who knows, yeah.
Well, I could tell it was.
It appears not to be a naturally made wetland.
But it's been there a long time, and it is. There's mature trees.
Glad it isn't a
Absolutely.
vernal pool.
Absolutely.
Then we'd be talking something different.
Yeah, it would be. So,
No, Richard.
I don't have anything right now, other than not reading that report.
Lisa?
I don't have any questions at this time.
Amy?
Yeah, I mean, we just got the findings from the peer review today, so I would recommend that we take time to look at the findings. Although, and again, I have not, only quickly took a look at it, and I agree that I don't think there's, was a big concern over moving flags, but there may have been some kind of comment about work within the resource area, buffer to the resource area for restoration, proposed restoration. So I think it does contain some important info, so I would recommend, reviewing that and coming back to it at the next hearing.
Okay.
The only thing I would say, I mean,
Very small.
this has been out there for a while on this wetlands piece on this site, and it's a pretty small piece of wetlands. The applicant originally asked if we would not, we'd just take a look at it ourselves as opposed to a peer review. We agreed, he agreed, they agreed to have a peer review, take a look at it. The peer review is minimal because the wetland is minimal. And the request is to remove a man-made pile of earth adjacent to the wetland. I'm just not seeing where the big deal is on this.
yeah, I think what I'm hearing, Mr. Chairman, is you just received Mr. Ivis's report. You haven't had a chance to digest what's in that report. But I'm not hearing that you need any additional information from the applicant. It sounds like that report makes recommendations perhaps on this remediation area where we're proposing to do plantings. I think it's perfectly acceptable to close the public hearing. It sounds like you have all of the information you need that would authorize you to then issue an order of conditions within 21 days. Any of the recommendations in his report regarding that planting area, you can incorporate those into your conditions as you digest his report over that 21-day period that you have to issue your order of conditions. I don't think there's anything additional that you need from the applicant with regards to the wetlands issues at this site.
Greg, can I just ask you a question, though,
Sure.
just regard to this project? So you're also showing work between the 50 and 100 for stormwater retention.
Correct.
So that work is within the jurisdiction of the commission as well.
Sure.
And are you confident with that piece? If we're closing this thing out, that work within that area is also part of that jurisdiction?
Yes. Yeah. We can talk a little bit about stormwater before we proceed with the wetland piece.
Sure.
Sure. So this site here does propose 3 different stormwater BMPs. We're collecting the roof runoff here. We're directing the roof into a series of dry wells in the backyard. We had very sandy soil at this site. We conducted a test pit right in the middle of those dry well locations. The backyard itself, is graded in such a way that we've proposed a shallow grass depression. That's the BMP that you see right here, so that this backyard runs off into this depression and infiltrates into the ground. At the front of the site, there's an existing low area. We're utilizing that low area as a rain garden so that our driveway and swale along the edge of the driveway capture and treat the runoff coming from the driveway. So as you'll see, the majority of the site, the driveway, the house, the dry wells associated with the house, that is all outside the 100-foot buffer. The only stormwater piece inside the 100-foot buffer is a grass depression associated with the runoff from the back lawn. It's a very minimal grading area. In looking at the stormwater, I brought copies of the current stormwater bylaw and stormwater bylaw regulations. I'm going to pass these out.
Do I have to look at them again?
I got to look at them again.
You wrote it, right?
Oh, I didn't write them.
Trip line. So this project, by way of background, we submitted an application on February 7th, and it was referred to as a low-impact project, and it's subject to administrative review per the bylaw. The bylaw basically classifies two different types of projects. They authorize an administrative review for low-impact projects that disturb less than 40,000 square feet of land. That's the scenario we have here. Per section 6B3 of the regulations, which if you flip to the back here, 6B3, it's toward the back. It has a referral clause, and it says the town planner or conservation agent may refer applications to the board or to the commission when an application is complex or where stormwater appears to negatively impact activities on the site. I've been directed to talk about stormwater in front of you as a commission, so I'm assuming that the agent is referring this application to the commission. Typically, under low-impact administrative approvals, the agent issues the permit without the consent of the commission, or in planning board's case, without the planning board. But since we're here in front of you, I'm assuming that we've been referred to the commission and not just the agent. I want to step back and look at the requirements of what are included in one of these. The bylaw itself has specific timelines. If you flip to the front here, the front page, this is the actual stormwater bylaw. Section 5E of the bylaw has 5E has the clause that allows the conservation agent to issue a stormwater permit for projects that do not disturb greater than 40,000 square feet, 1,000 square feet of land of 20%, 25% or greater slope. It's considered an administrative stormwater project review, which shall not require a public hearing. That's what we filed this application under. Listed as a low-impact project, requested as administrative review per section 5E of the bylaw. Flipping to section 7A of the bylaw, which are the submittal requirements. 7A talks specifically about an application fee. It says each application must be accompanied by the appropriate application fee pursuant to the stormwater regulations. This fee shall be sufficient to cover any expenses connected with the public hearing where required and review of the stormwater permit application. I would tell you that the town of Scituate has not accepted or adopted any sort of application fee schedule. You won't find it on your website. You won't find it on the planning board's website. There has never been a fee schedule attached to a stormwater permit. As we read that section, 7A, submittal requirements, it specifically reads that the application fee shall be pursuant to the stormwater regulations. If we go to the stormwater regulations, section 6, section 6 is the administrative stormwater project review. for low-impact projects, and it has application contents. The applicant shall prepare an application form, must be signed by the applicant, must have a brief narrative of the project, must have a plan depicting the topography. The word fee or application fee is not included anywhere in the application contents for an administrative review. But what is interesting is the other type of stormwater permit, not the administrative one, but when you require a full permit, when you disturb more than 40,000 square feet, when you're not the single-family home project, and you require the full permit, you actually apply under Section 7, which is on the next page, which is a much more detailed application process and specifically includes an application fee. And it says that that fee shall cover the cost of a review engineer. So the bylaw here does not appear to have an application fee or the provisions to request a fee under administrative stormwater review. That being said, going back to the beginning of the bylaw, Section 9C. 9C are the timelines that are associated with the review process, and it describes specifically what actions the commission or the agent can take when a stormwater permit application is submitted. 9C specifically says that the permit can be approved. It can be approved with conditions, or if it finds that the applicant hasn't submitted sufficient information, or if there's going to be a failure to meet the objectives of the bylaw, they can disapprove the application. Section 9D requires that the application be acted on within 30 days of the submittal. I had gone to the town clerk and gotten a letter that I presented to you at your last meeting stating that 30 days had gone by without any of those three actions occurring. The town clerk has since redacted that letter and expressed that the applicant had, that the commission had acted by requesting a review fee. Again, I go back to looking at the application requirements. The application requirements are very specific in this bylaw, and a review fee is not part of the application. Sure.
I'm completely confused now, so
Yeah.
thank you very much.
Yeah.
So, does he need a stormwater or not, Frank?
I don't think
I
that's the
will-
point he was
He
making.
needs a stormwater, but he's saying that he needs a stormwater under an administrative review as opposed to having a peer review.
Okay.
But the second part of the argument is that he's constructively approved because
We missed the boat.
missed the timeline, is the argument that the applicant's making. Gonna
Right, and
shorten it all up.
could I make just a couple of points?
Sure.
Because certainly the bylaw and the regulations have inconsistencies. We've identified these. We've actually met with a working group, which the town is, you know, it's a goal for the town to address some of these inconsistencies. I'm going to be part of the work group. Greg, are you on that work group? I think Steve Bjorklund is. We've got a number of people that have been identified that want to work towards a common goal of making these regulations, you know, more streamlined, especially for these single-family homes.
Yeah.
But for now, what we have is what we have. So our interpretation in the Planning and Development Department would be a little bit of a different spin than what Greg, you know, because I think you can, there's a lot of gray area. You can interpret, you know, things differently depending on which eyes you have on. Anyhow, so the point that I was going to make was that, first of all, that the issuing authority here is, in fact, Conservation Commission or town planner or Conservation Natural Resource Officer, who may issue the stormwater permit in the administrative capacity that you're talking about. We had requested funds for this shortly after receiving it and had acknowledgement from Jeff Hassett that this was in process, but it just never came to be, and I think that was a lot to do with storms that had happened in March. and continuances that we had weather-related. But regardless, we are authorized to retain a licensed professional engineer or other professional consultant to advise the permitting authority, which is us, to review these calculations. And, you know, if you're not looking to make a science project out of it, Lot 1, which is concurrently being developed with Lot 2, is actually in process of having the stormwater application reviewed. And I'm assuming that your assessment of that is that should be an administrative review as well?
It is, and the
Yeah.
planning board actually signed it in as an administrative approval, and that's how that's moving forward.
With a peer review, which is in process, and it was the same peer review that we were going to concurrently run together. I am aware that the peer review for Lot 1 did identify a number of concerns that are being worked through with Greg. So, you know, taking that, perhaps we can streamline some of the comments and concerns that were identified and incorporate, you know, those just to make sure that those are addressed to get us further down the line on the stormwater permit here.
Sure, I do want to address that. You know, we had been requested by the commission to provide funding for a peer review. And, you know, the applicant did come in and I believe request a second price associated with that. When you look back at these stormwater permits, how they've evolved since 2008 when the bylaw was first implemented, it used to be that these smaller projects, we would come in and we would sit down directly, the design engineers would sit down with the agent or the planner at the time, and we'd review the stormwater, we would review plantings on the site, rain gardens on the site, and it was a fairly simple process on these administrative approval projects. It was exactly that, it was administrative. They've evolved now into spending thousands and thousands of dollars on the design engineer, thousands and thousands of dollars on a review consultant with the town. And that was not the intent of the bylaw. Specifically in the bylaw, section 6A, I want to read a section here. It says, "This review is intended to increase efficiency in the issuing of permits." What we've mutated this thing into is exactly the opposite of the intent of this bylaw. And this section here, for projects that alter less than an acre of land, we're now charging these exorbitant fees on review consultants that are unjustified. It's not what is written. Review fees are only in the section that's for the full stormwater permit. They're not in the administrative approval section. You know, if we were able to retain a second quote, or a quote that was a little bit more reasonable, again, we also had concerns with the consultant engineer's ability to review the project in a timely fashion. We understand the review engineer we were working with has several other projects going on. Looking at the last project that was with the same review engineer on Jericho Road, it took over a month before that project even started a review process with him. So I'm asking the commission to make an interpretation on whether we have the constructive approval because none of the action was taken appropriately, or per the administrative approval, the commission can review this project and they can issue a permit. I'm asking you to take one of those actions, either issue a permit. We are proposing stormwater mitigation here. We have 2 rain gardens. We do have dry wells. It's what you would typically see on a site of this caliber. We submitted our calculations to you almost 2 months ago at this point. These didn't go out for peer reviews until fairly recently, just within the past several years. They started going out. They never used to prior to that. And I think it does overstep what is written, unless you can point me otherwise.
And that's your opinion,
where
Greg.
it is,
Can
unless
we
you can point to me
respectfully
where it
disagree
says,
in the planning and development department.
everything in the
Feel like-
application contents has been provided to you.
Okay, and that's true, but we requested and are authorized to engage the services of a review engineer to go over stormwater application, and that is in the bylaw.
Can you point to the section in the bylaw?
I just read it.
I'm under section 6B, application contents,
Page 5.
page 5.
I think these need to be rewritten.
Yeah, they do,
It's
there's
a
a lot of
nightmare. I
gray
mean,
area.
I don't know what to say.
Totally agree with that. We're just trying to do the best that we can. for
No,
the
I
town of
understand, but
Scituate.
it's just causing such a controversy
Yeah.
between, and I hear where you're both coming from. I think you're both right and you're both wrong. I mean, it's just, I don't know what to say anymore.
It's reading section 6B, which are the application contents for an administrative approval, versus reading section 7B, which is for the full-blown stormwater permit, where you will find specifically the language, the applicant may be required to pay for the cost of a consulting engineer. You don't find that language in the administrative approval section of this bylaw.
Well, I'm under stormwater bylaw where we're looking at 5D. The permitting authority may refer an application for a stormwater permit to its consulting engineer for review. Following receipt of a completed permit application, the permitting authority shall seek review and comment from the Conservation Commission or Planning Board as applicable. Blah, 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 for projects within the water resource district. I mean, there's a lot in here. I didn't write them, Greg. We're trying to do the
Understood.
best that we can.
Understood.
We're trying to be fair and consistent to all the different applicants.
No, I understand that, that's what I'm saying. I can see both sides of the coin here.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I'll be honest, I don't want to take sides with either one of you because I can legitimately see where you're coming from, Greg, as a,
Sure.
you know, for you doing the best for your client, but I can see where Amy's coming from. She's trying to follow what she feels are the rules and regs that she was hired to enforce here. So we're like, you know,
Well, and
want to throw
I'm
in the
not a
air.
professional engineer. I'm
No,
not
I understand
qualified
it.
to
Well, I'm
perform
certainly
peer
not
review.
one either.
So, that's why we ask peer reviews
Yeah.
to step in and to give us the expertise that we need to protect the town and the residents
But,
and comply with the bylaws and regs.
but the idea was, when this started, was that the stormwater was supposed to be a fairly simplistic piece. And in the case where there was a large, in small lots or tight spots or places where people would be impacted, that it would be more scrutinized, and in places where that wouldn't happen that way, that it could be less of a review and less burden on the applicant. They're using a larger piece of land. So we've gotten away from that. And this is nothing new. I mean, this has been debated for a while now, and it's, unfortunately, it's gotten more complicated by, A, the storms that we had, so we had meetings that were pushed back and things like that, and at the same time, you know, some of the personnel that were involved in some of that are volunteering at the shelter or doing other pieces and weren't here at Town Hall. It wasn't open. So I have a little problem with the constructive approval. And I also know that there was back and forth with your office and some miscommunication there as well. On the other hand, it does seem like this has been delayed longer than it needs to be. The wetlands piece, in my mind, is relatively simple. We're not in a BVW or anything real pressing. It's pretty simple, isolated wetlands with a few simple lines. And it would be frustrating to me as an applicant to pay more for a consultant than it did to have my engineer go out and flag it. It seems like we're getting away from where we wanted to have this happen. That just doesn't, I don't like it. And I don't think the commission
Don't like it.
likes that either.
Well, I mean, the fact that,
But you're also requesting, I mean, the town of Scituate has a bylaw protecting an isolated wetlands, and I've told you this before. You're coming in and asking if you can work right up to that line.
Correct.
You're not asking, can we work between the 50 and 100? You've come to this commission and said, can we work right at the isolated wetlands line? Granted, you're removing a man-made parcel, but it's been there for 40 or 50 years. And there's benefit to that. There's no doubt about it. I also think there's benefit to looking at these lots. I mean, I walked out there on these lots and I contacted you. I had concerns about material that's on the site. You know, there's a mix of asphalt, there's some barrels there that look like they might have had some sort of asphalt product in them years ago. This is definitely an altered site.
Sure.
It's not any.
It certainly is.
You don't have, and to my other point is, it's not a pristine site that's been trees and a beautiful section of woods that has been there forever. You're improving a site that's been degraded for a long time. So there's definitely positive aspects to having this site developed, in my mind. You know, there's an old foundation that's there that needs to go. It's a mess.
All the stuff you just mentioned would all certainly be cleaned up as part of this development.
Right. No, I get that.
Regarding the work inside the 50, you will notice that I do have two separate erosion control barriers on the plan, and I specifically did it that way. One erosion control barrier is here, which is around the limit of work really associated with the house. We have a separate erosion control barrier around that stockpile. You know, if you determine that stockpile, if it's too detrimental to do that work, I think you could include a condition that removal of the stockpile is not permitted under your order.
Do you have a plan, Greg, to restore that area, or what would you do with that area?
We're calling out just for a wildlife seed mix to be placed on it.
So you're gonna remove that gravel, put some loam down?
Right down to grade, put some loam down and wildlife seed mix over it.
And leave the trees around it.
Yeah, leave any trees around it that you can, sure. But yeah, it's not proposed to be reclaimed as lawn or anything like that, no. It's not usable area.
And that's where I think you're gonna wanna evaluate what the peer review has for recommendations with respect to that, to make sure you agree. I also wanted to note a couple of things that I was informed of. And one is that these lots are not legally recognized at this point. There is a question about the status about the lots. Also, there's no approved water connection at this point. And I believe that they're still waiting for ZBA to weigh in on a special permit.
I can address all three of those. The Zoning Board of Appeals has approved these lots. They approved it unanimously at their February meeting. They have issued their decision. That decision will be required to be recorded prior to construction. The Planning Board, we filed with the Planning Board prior to our submittal with you for endorsement of the Form A plan. That is on their agenda for Thursday night this week. I don't anticipate any issues with the division of this piece of property. Regarding the water main, we have been in talks with DPW. We're bringing a new water main from Greenfield Lane down to the frontage of this site. All of the work is outside of the 100-foot buffer. The applicant acknowledges that that's a requirement here. That's certainly outside of your purview.
They all are.
Oh.
I don't know what you want to do.
If I could make some recommendations on how to proceed, I think you can close the public hearing associated with the notice of intent. You can interpret the recommendations in the IVIS report. You can incorporate any of those recommendations you feel necessary into an order of conditions. The stormwater permit was requested as an administrative approval. Because we alter less than 1 acre of land, that does not require a public hearing process. That permit can be issued outside of a public hearing process. We would request that that permit, be followed up on relatively quickly, or we would request that you concur with our constructive approval. Any modifications in the stormwater permit per section 9C, you have to take one of 3 actions if you do decide to act on it and issue a permit. You can approve it, you can approve it with conditions, or you could deny it. If you had conditions or felt that we needed to do additional mitigation, we could do additional mitigation. That additional mitigation would all be outside of the 100-foot buffer zone. That's where the house is. You could accommodate any additional mitigation outside of the 100.
I think we should approve it with conditions.
Anybody in the audience want to speak to this? That's too bad. Well, you can request that we close it, and we can close that. And as you point out, add whatever we want to, or what is sensible in our orders. I think I'm going to take a little time to review the stormwater piece, discuss that with the agent and whoever else we need to. I'm not thrilled about the constructive approval.
No.
And I think given the situations of the storms and the other events that happened and stuff, it would be a shame to have to get down that road. But I think we can discuss that and see if we can come to some amicable ground on that.
Sure.
Would be my suggestion.
So we're gonna close.
That would be, if that's what the applicant wants, I think we can do that.
Okay.
Close with conditions?
And then we'll do the conditions at the next
Yeah. and
meeting.
We can figure out.
I think that's a good idea.
All right?
I just don't like this tension.
Okay.
I make a motion to close.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right.
Thank you very much.
Town of Scituate, McCarthy, Cedar Point, replace gravity sewer system. On April 11th, 2018 at 6:30 PM, the Town of Scituate Conservation Commission will hold a wetlands hearing under Chapter 131, Section 40 of the Massachusetts General Laws and Section 30700 Town of Scituate Code of Bylaws regarding the application of the Town of Scituate DPW to replace an existing gravity sewer system in Cedar Point area at various streets in Scituate. Abutters and other interested parties are invited to attend. Good evening.
Good evening. Mike Paulin with Weston and Sampson Engineers on behalf of the DPW. So hopefully this is a little more straightforward than a lot of your other ones tonight, but the sewers in this area are some of the oldest sewers in town. The town gets a lot of stormwater at their treatment plant. They're treating a lot of water that isn't wastewater. This is the biggest culprit based on all the studies that have been done by the town. They put a lot of money into trying to rehab the sewers unsuccessfully, finally determining that replacing the sewers with a new low-pressure sewer system with individual grinder pumps is the way to go. So basically, we're going to replace the old, deep gravity sewers with small diameter, shallow, low-pressure sewers. And each home will receive an individual grinder pump that will pump into that system, so it'll be a pressurized system that won't be able to receive infiltration. So basically, this is the project area of Lighthouse Road, Rebecca Road. The green is a internal BVW in the backyards of the homes. The yellow is the 100-foot buffer, and the red lines are the proposed sewers. And the whole area is land subject to flooding, so I think that's the resource area that's actually in the NOI. So we have erosion control, straw wattles everywhere that we're within 100 feet of work in the roadway, and catch basin protection in a couple of catch basins that are in the project area. So I think that's the basics.
So that whole area now, rather than using a deep sewer line is all gonna be pumped?
Correct. So there's 130 homes, so each home will have their own, and the grinder pump units will be floodplain. They have specific units that are
Right.
made for flood-prone areas. So each home will have a pump pumping into a low pressure, a small 2 to 4 inch low pressure sewer that will pump back to Jericho Road.
So it's still gonna go to the same pump station and all that?
Correct.
It's just in that area where things are shifting, you're gonna, and that's probably a clay pipe or something?
Yeah,
that's-
so, yeah, exactly. And it's like 16 feet deep in some places. This pipe will be 5 feet deep, small diameter, installed adjacent to the existing sewer, so everything's already previously disturbed. The existing sewer services will be replaced in place because the homes are already all plumbed for the sewer, so.
Yep.
So we had actually done some water main improvements on these same roadways a couple years back, and that was a negative determination on an RDA because it was all in the roadway. In this case,
Right.
we have to go off the property to reconnect each home, so that was what triggered it even coming in for an NOI at all.
Penny?
No, I don't have any questions.
When this, assuming this goes along, is it day by day, open it up and then refill day by day, so it's not closed overnight or anything like that?
Correct, yeah, they should be able to go pretty quick. I mean, it's very shallow, again, 5 foot deep, small diameter pipe, so they'll backfill on a daily basis, pave on a weekly basis, and they should be done with that mainline sewer in probably less than 3 or 4 weeks. And then everything else will just be on the property work as far as putting in the grinder pump units.
So the individual pump chambers are typically done by a private contractor so the town's gonna install the main.
So in this case, the town's gonna do everything actually, because these properties are already sewered, they don't want the homeowners to have to deal with any of it. So the town's putting in the pumps and everything, so it's all covered under this project.
Next question.
Okay.
So we're gonna send out permission slips to each home. Dave Ball's already been in touch with everyone out there. We're gonna send out permission slips that will grant access for the contractor that wins the bid to go onto each property just to put in the sewer service.
That was my next question, Frank.
Lisa? Amy?
Yeah, so, I think it's gonna be a great improvement for this area of town. Cut down on the infiltration and the treatment of the water. Appears to meet the requirements of the different regs, so I would, say that an order of conditions would be appropriate.
Anybody in the audience? I didn't draw any crowd. The only question I'd have, and I don't, did Weston Sampson design the sewer lines that were on First Cliff?
Yep. We did.
So it seemed to me, I think that was Fedco that did that
Yep.
construction. One of the problems that has happened out there, and it would be a concern to our commission, is the actual connection between the sewer from the house to the main. And there seemed to be there's a valve that
On the grinder pump units, okay.
so that it doesn't feedback. If someone's having a problem,
Yep.
they can shut off their house. And whatever was happening to those, a lot of those connections were breaking. And we were actually winding up with a fair amount of sewage pumping up and going to the surface of
Really?
the street.
Okay.
So I don't know whether it would be something to take a look at that. But it seemed like a weak link in the process. And it might have been that it was a private contractor making that connection with the other. But in several places on the cliff, especially, there was a break there.
Interesting.
And then there'd be
Okay.
sewage flowing up onto the street from that valve,
I'll follow
so.
up with the DPW and see what was happening out there. So yeah, in that case, the general contractor installed the sewer service up to the property line, and then the homeowner hired their own contractor. to
The
come do the rest of
contractor
it,
that
so-
did the work for the town did that shut-off.
The valve, yeah.
And then after that shut-off, there was a connection between the two, and it just didn't seem to work properly. And it might be
So
something
hopefully
you
this
want
will
to
be
ask.
better. Yeah,
that
well,
there was
hopefully
some-
in this case, we'll have one contractor installing everything. Hopefully that'll be a better.
But there was a plastic
situation.
fitting or
If
something.
it's a fitting,
that-
I'll find out, yeah.
that was poor.
So we're gonna have a meeting with the residents and the local vendor for the.
Obviously,
grinder
we
pump
don't want
units.
these things breaking.
No, of course, nobody in town wants that, obviously, so, not just the
especially near
conservation
the
commission,
ocean.
so, yeah.
Right.
So we're gonna have a meeting with the residents and the local rep for the grinder pump units, so I'll bring
Yeah.
that up with them as well.
And then these grinder pumps have capacity, so if there's a power outage, they've got some time to.
Correct, yep, so they come with 24-hour storage, and the town's discussing if the homeowners want to add on a larger basin, they might have that option too. But it is always 24 hours, and usually during power outages, people are using less water and everything anyways, so.
Okay. All right.
I make a motion to close.
Second.
All in favor?
All right.
Great, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Sorry it's so late. Monaco, 6 Brookline Road, new garage and drive.
It's only 9:30. We were at town meeting till 11.
On April 11th, 2018, at a 6:40 meeting, Town of Scituate Conservation Commission will hold a wetlands hearing under Chapter 131, Section 40 of Massachusetts General Laws and Section 30700, Town of Scituate Code of Bylaws regarding the application of Karen Monaco to construct an attached garage and driveway on property located at 6 Brookline Road, Scituate. Abutters and other interested parties are invited to attend. Good evening.
Hi,
So just for the record, want to give us your...
I'm Karen Monaco.
Hi, Karen.
Yeah.
And we know Mr. Crawford?
Yes.
So what do you got?
This project consists, takes place on a 9,000 square foot lot, about 100 feet west of Jericho Road. It's on the northerly side of the street. We're proposing to construct a 550 square foot garage on the west side of the existing dwelling. The reason we're here is that the lot is in a land subject to coastal storm flowage. The FEMA map shows the elevation, flood elevation to be an AE zone, elevation 15. The grades on the lot are between 12 and 13. The garage, as I said, is about 550 square feet. In addition to that, it's proposed to widen the driveway, probably about double what it is currently in the front, and they'll be losing the driveway that goes back to the rear of the lot. Try to answer any questions you may have.
Okay, Penny?
I'm sorry, I might be asking you something you already said. What is the driveway going to be?
Didn't say.
What's it gonna be made out of?
Yeah.
I believe it, probably just blacktop.
I haven't seen it.
Yeah. Yeah.
What he was saying is that the garage is basically going to be, I mean, there's driveway there now.
Is it blacktopped all the way out back?
Yes.
Yes. Right.
Yeah,
So I'll be losing a lot of driveway because the garage will be there. So what's remaining will be wider than it is right now. But probably the net effect is a loss of driveway.
Okay, I'm trying to wheel.
Hey, take a look at this. So the existing driveway goes all back to here.
Yeah, right. So we're
The
getting rid
existing
of.
driveway goes back to here, here, over, and comes back. So the garage addition is bumping out here. You're not removing any kind of, right now, there's no structure there at all.
No, that's right.
So they're gonna build a structure here.
Yeah.
This asphalt, as well as the asphalt underneath here, is gonna be eliminated, but they're widening the asphalt. Is the driveway going beyond the side of the, garage? Looks like the driveway might be going almost to the property line.
Yeah, it goes about 6 feet to the left of the
Oh, yeah.
corner of the, front corner of the garage.
So, is
Yeah.
that all
Big wide area.
so this is all asphalt here.
And then you got the runoff from the roof.
That's a question to ask.
Yeah, to be honest with you, I hadn't even thought about whether or not to have any asphalt on the side of the driveway.
What we tend to look for is to
Yeah.
try to have as much impervious surface as possible. So, two things. You mean pervious, right? Pervious.
Yes, I knew what you meant.
Late.
We're tired tonight.
Paul was dying to hear that. He'll use that the next time. I could have sworn I heard you say.
I just wanted to make sure I got it.
Yeah. You know what I mean.
I do.
I don't care which kid you are when I yell at you, you know? But essentially, the garage now becomes impervious, as well as the addition of the driveway. So what you're creating is a larger impervious surface than
Yeah.
what you have
I see
now.
what you're saying, yep.
So in an ideal world, if you were to build the garage, it would be nice if the driveway or a portion of the driveway could be something that's pervious as opposed to all asphalt. That would be helpful in terms of this. You're in a floodplain. Obviously, water's got to go somewhere. Most of it's probably going to run back down the street, but ideally, some of it would be able to go back into the ground. And sometimes you can do things, depends on what the soils here probably aren't awesome, but sometimes you can take your garage and have your gutters or whatever go into a couple of dry wells or something like that, and then the other alternative would be a portion of your driveway or all your driveway could be something other than asphalt. It could be pavers, it could be crushed stones.
So pavers kind of go.
Yeah,
because there's space between
water
them.
can still get
There's
through.
certain pavers that work and certain that don't. They-
Okay.
And you have to make sure that you use the right one that allows for permeability.
Yeah, I've seen some where there's actually grass.
Yeah.
between
You don't
them.
necessarily have to do that. They
Okay.
do make pavers that, and it has a lot to do with the sub base. This crushed stone or gravel that the water can run through the pavers
Right.
and into the ground. So,
I could look into that.
They're called pervious pavers.
yeah, there's a whole myriad of
Yeah.
different things that are available to that. I mean, the project's pretty straightforward. You're not around a wetland or anything,
No,
so.
I don't, I don't have any water issues at the house. I don't even have a sump pump.
Sure.
We don't want anybody to think that that happens here.
I should point out that we are providing smart vents.
Yep.
The area of the garage, as I said, is 550 square feet, and we're putting in 3 vents, each capable of mitigating 200 square feet, inches apiece, yeah.
And that's great for the flood area. It's just, it doesn't really do much for the
Runoff, no.
runoff.
Wouldn't putting pavers in, wouldn't that increase the cost
It
pretty
would.
dramatically?
It's expensive. I mean, I'd be
Yeah.
careful to
I mean, I could, if it was a requirement, then potentially what I could do would be to do asphalt in front of the garage, but to the side where the fence is, maybe put crushed stone or something like that, if that would be,
that would certainly,
That would be good.
Compromise.
That would be good. Yeah,
okay?
because she already has an existing
Yep.
asphalt driveway.
Yep. No, I think that would be a
Yeah.
good compromise, myself.
Very reasonable.
So are you saying then that, so am I obligated now then to do that?
Well, it'll be part of your orders. When we write the orders, we would put in the orders that portion of the driveway would be asphalt, say the area in front of the garage door. It looks to me like the proposed driveway, if we're facing the front of your house, the proposed driveway is about 1.5 feet wider than the opening that goes into your garage on the right-hand side. Right, Bob?
Yeah,
Yes.
it's 23 feet, and then we're talking about a 16-foot garage.
Door.
A door, I'm sorry.
Yep. So if you had a driveway that was, say, 19 feet or 20 feet wide, paved, and then the remaining portion would be gravel or crushed stone. Want to take a look?
Yeah, I'm just thinking, wouldn't it look kind of funny to have gravel on both sides?
I wouldn't do both sides. I'd have.
Just do the one side?
Just
Yeah.
to the
One.
left side, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it'd
okay.
look like a turnaround or something. It would be fine.
I'm not trying to do
Should I-
Bob's
should I
job.
take a peek what
Yeah,
you
well, you're gonna be living with it for a while, so. So here's your old driveway line.
Yep.
That goes all the way back.
Yep.
Here's your proposed driveway line.
Right.
It's about 18 inches from the edge of this is the opening for your garage?
Yes.
So he's got about 18 inches here, so if you go like 18 inches here, and then make that come out, and that's the asphalt, and then this area,
Yeah. Crushed stone.
Bob did a much better
Or
job for you
maybe,
than,
maybe I would even do the pavers over there.
whatever.
If
Just
as
make
long as
it,
looked okay.
make that part pervious and
Yeah,
then that part asphalt.
Yeah.
Okay.
that sounds reasonable.
And it will say that in your
In the
orders.
conditions.
Okay, yeah,
Okay,
All
all
right.
right,
sounds good.
and then it looks really good.
Amy? Amy?
Do you have any?
I think that's a great idea.
Yeah, yeah,
Why can't they all be like this?
I know. Oh, well. Is there anybody?
Let's
in
keep
the
it going
audience?
then.
Yeah. Anybody in the audience?
Okay, I
Oh,
make a
thank
motion
goodness.
to close.
Thank you.
Second? Second.
All in favor?
Yay.
Aye. Great, thank you.
So,
Thank you.
so what happens now? You send something to me or to
You.
Bob?
At our next meeting, we will issue the conditions and sign them, and then you can come in and pick them up, or do they get sent if they don't pick them up?
No, they don't get.
No, you just come in and
They
pick them
come
up.
in
So
and
our
pick
next
them up.
meeting's the 23rd.
Actually, no, we send them.
Okay.
You send,
We do
so I don't.
mail them unless you want to pick them up, then you should let us know.
If you want to pick them up, it's just as easy or easier.
Yeah.
But otherwise, we'll call them.
I'll pick it up.
Do we need a revised plan from Bob or not?
You should give us something. Thanks, Carol.
You could just.
Want a copy of mine?
No, I have. I
You-
understand
you know what
you're
we're gonna
saying,
do.
yeah.
Okay. All right.
Very good.
Okay.
Thank you.
So our meeting's the 23rd, so the conditions would be out the 24th. Am I right?
Okay, so
Just call before
Day
you
after, but call
come.
first.
Give a call before you come.
Thank you.
Well, why don't you go out in the hall and show some of these other guys how to make this simpler?
This is a simpler project.
It's very complex, driveway and garage.
One more.
And land subject to coastal storm flow, and, you know.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Hurley, 125 River Street, new foundation under portions of the dwelling. On April 11, 2018, at the 6:50 meeting, the Town Hall Situate Conservation Commission will hold a wetlands hearing under Chapter 131, Section 40 of the Massachusetts General Laws and Section 30700 Town of Situate Code of Bylaws regarding the application of John Hurley to construct a new foundation under a portion of an existing dwelling on property located at 125 River Street, Hummerock. You're the expert. Abutters and other interested parties are invited to attend. Good evening.
Good evening. So happy to say something out loud. I'm Julie Johnson with Custom Home Designs, representing the homeowner, John Hurley. The project is pretty straightforward as far as what I've heard tonight.
So I
The
think that's
existing
the
house is
ocean
a
side.
two-story home with a
But
single
there's a whole-
story bump to it.
Ocean Street's way higher.
Easy to see on here.
So-
Story home, it's got this little one-story bump,
So,
built back in the 40s.
here's Ocean Drive. Here's the ocean, here's Ocean Drive, here's
The
River.
homeowner had
That's
some
correct. And
work
It's not
done
on
on
this.
The
it.
river would be down here.
Just interior renovations,
It's not
kitchen,
here, it's
bathroom,
here.
fix-ups. And he went to go into this single-story section, or asked the contractor to go in there to just do some fix-up. And we realized that, that it was failing. It literally sits on the ground, so it was
Here's the
kind of
picture
cue
of
to
the
that.
circle.
When we went in and we pulled up some of the floor, the joists are sitting in the sand. There's a couple of bricks, and I brought some pictures. I don't know that you need to see the visuals, but there's just bricks holding up the corners. And so I went to Bob Vogel and talked to him about it, and he said, you know, it really is a repair, because we're just gonna rebuild exactly what's there. So it's, he said, as long as you're not proposing to go outside, make it any bigger, adding any space, we're not triggering the 50% rule. It's, the value's 94,000, and the builder or the contractor has said, I'm well under 40,000, so we're not gonna get near that. But he did say, go to Rivermore Engineering, get some type of a foundation system that's going to fit this. So I also went to Amy and ran it by Amy, and she said, yes, go see what Rivermore comes up with. what they did come up with, understanding the area, it's in an AE 14 zone. The existing house, the first floor is at 10.85. In fact, this little section here is about 4 inches lower, so we're gonna bring that up. They came up with a pier system, independent footings, and we're gonna sit the pressure-treated dirt on the footing and hang a 6-inch floor system on that, so that we're really getting as much distance and separation between the existing earth and the underside frame. So we'll bring that floor up to match this house, but we can't do anything about raising it any higher than that because we wouldn't be able to get into it. So that ceiling height has to stay.
Oh, yeah.
So it's pretty straightforward. We're just looking to rebuild exactly what's there and put a foundation under it that makes sense.
It's fine, as far as I can see. The only issue would be they're on the street, would be, limited work sort of stuff.
Yeah, there is a retaining wall around the property that does separate it from the street, and there is a sidewalk at that section of the
Yeah, I'm
area.
familiar with it.
So, if you wanted to add that to the conditions, that there's some type of a separation just for debris or anything.
Exactly.
But I think even along where he does have a neighbor here, that's all got a good sized retaining wall going along it. Block wall that's there.
How'd they get away with a wall?
It's been there since 1940.
That's fine.
Did Bob have any concerns about the addition not being at the required elevation, Julie?
His thing was that because it doesn't trigger the 50%, he felt that it didn't really have to be, it didn't have to build to that standard of compliance for everything because of that. And because it's just under 20% of the area of the whole house. So, for all of those reasons and the fact that we're not going anywhere beyond it, it's the existing, he really felt that he would issue the permit for a repair. So he felt it was pretty simple.
But you're tearing down that wing and then...
Well, the only way to get in there to do this, if it was, the only way to get to it is to take it down. But honestly, the condition of what's there, it wouldn't comply with today's building codes. So we'd end up having to reinforce those walls. We're redoing the floor, what's left.
Okay. No, I remember a long time ago, we debated, but I think it was an addition on the corner of Gilson Road and Kent Street. And the people were adding on a substantial addition.
I worked on that job.
And then the question was, did the addition have to be at the elevated, and I don't remember the,
They ended up that, well,
it was King or
I think
something
they
like
did.
that?
Yeah, it was the Kings. That was a long time ago.
Yeah.
But
I can't
they
remember what I
also
had for lunch,
That
but
was a huge addition. It wasn't the,
it was a big
it had
addition.
nothing to do with what was existing.
That's
There
right.
was nothing existing.
That's right.
This was all new construction.
Yep.
Onto the house.
That's right.
Yeah.
So that makes the difference.
Yeah, I think it does in this
It
case.
does.
Okay, all right. No, I just recall having that debate.
Wow, good memory.
I say.
Sometimes he does.
Selective.
That was Vinnie Felicia's days.
Yeah. Okay.
Anybody else?
Anybody in the audience?
No? Okay, I make a motion to close.
Second.
All in favor? Thank you very much.
Oh, the short ones are at the end. I guess
I
that's
know.
good, but I guess it's good for us. It's okay, we can get out of here quickly.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Wow, what are we looking for here now?
All right, so we have orders of conditions.
Yeah,
Tuck at 222 Central Ave, reconstruct and enlarge.
the deck. I make a motion, we accept them as written.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Fitzpatrick, 43 Collier Road,
Yay.
raise and rebuild.
I make a motion, we accept those as written.
Truly, we're done with that?
Yeah, we're done with it.
Second.
Yay.
All in favor?
Aye.
Millennium Maintenance and Power Sweeping, intersection of 3A and Man Lot.
I make a motion, we accept those as written.
Second.
Okay.
Oh, do we have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye. Aye.
McLaughlin, 135 Glades Road to elevate.
I make a motion, we accept those as written.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Marshall, 17 Nielsen Road, shed.
I make a motion, we accept those as written.
Welby, 90 Ann Vinyl Road, landscape clear.
I'm in a butter.
Question on that, Frank.
I'm a
Yep.
butter to the property.
Landscape clear for lawn, portion of basin stuff. And this is like the asterisk or something too. Is there something else?
It was a part of the amended agenda,
Okay.
Oh, Welby Builders?
because this is an example of what happens when you close an issue in the same night, because, Carol, refresh my memory on what happened here, did we go by the date? No, I know, we were closed an issue within 21 days, and so technically, we should have had you guys come into the office and sign before this meeting.
Right.
But that didn't happen because things are insanity in the office, so,
Okay.
Bill called and reminded us of that fact, and so we.
Yeah, that's not the reason.
Yeah, we had added it on
Okay.
to make sure that, we were just gonna process it with everything else, but in fact, it should have been a couple of days before, so.
Yeah, what the conversation which I have with Paul is, and again, we're not here to discuss that, but what I am here to discuss, we got the conditions today, this isn't what the board voted. And at the meeting, very specifically, we said standard conditions plus 2 conditions. And Paul Paris actually said, read into the order, the 2 conditions are the conditions that are reflected, your number 35 and your number 2. Conditions number 33, 34, 30, and 31 were never voted, never discussed. And so, and I can go through these, and I've reviewed these, this isn't just to be for the sake of doing it, but if you want to hear my rationale, like, for instance, 31, most
Well,
of
why don't we
that.
start from the beginning?
Yeah,
Tell us-
okay.
Are these just part of our standard orders, though?
No, they're not. They're special conditions.
They're special conditions?
So it's
Yeah,
it's a special condition.
They're special conditions that we carry through each of our orders.
Or is it specific to this
Yeah.
project? Which is it?
Yeah,
Well-
it's special.
Yeah, I'm not sure until he.
Where are we?
Yeah.
Look
Go
at
ahead.
number 30, condition number 30 is, there's no project in North America that a bank would lend money on.
Well, what is the order?
It says that these orders and conditions herein rely on the project design prepared by applicant's professionals, blah, blah, blah. If during the construction of the approved designs prove to be inadequate for whatever reason. Now, the whole reason that the Wetlands Protection Act is there, and the whole reason the Scituate bylaw is there, is to set forth very specific criteria on if something isn't correct, how procedurally go about it. That's what due process is all about. This right here says if it's inadequate for whatever reason, no standard. At this point, you're outside of the bylaw, you're outside of the general laws. If for any reason whatsoever, in anyone's opinion, what you're requiring is that the project would have to be redesigned or reconstructed. If someone violates an order of conditions and you're not in compliance with Scituate's bylaws, or if you're not in compliance with the state laws, there's a mechanism for dealing with this. This creates an ad hoc mechanism outside of the law. And it's,
That's in all of our, fits in, that's not something that was created for this order. That's in
It's
all of our
a
orders.
standard
Yeah, that's a standard.
that we always use. You're the first one to pick it up.
How long,
Just to
when
show
you
you
say
that-
we've always used it, how long have we used it?
Probably
Since-
since Vinnie Kalish's was here.
Well, since I've been here, and you've been here.
Yeah, longer than you guys have been here.
Frank, one of the things to think about on that too is where the planning board issued the
Next page is
stormwater
over
plan,
there.
which was a subdivision and special permit. If there had to be any changes made under this condition, we have to go back and amend the special permit and the subdivision approval to the planning board.
Well, if you filed with them together, Paul, you wouldn't have to.
We did.
No. If you had filed with us and the planning board at the same time,
We couldn't do that.
We already have it, it's never discussed.
Because the planning board changed this design in the area where the stormwater system is,
yeah.
that was revised.
Well, they increased the outflow because they didn't feel that one worked, which put you,
So
you,
standard.
Yeah, you're picking up on something that goes through with all of ours, Bill.
So,
They are.
That's not something that was made
That's
up
why
for
we didn't,
this.
it didn't jump out
Yeah.
in reading it.
so, number
When do you have what?
33 and 4, now mind you, we already on our plans.
go ahead.
On the open space, we already have permanent markers, signs, borders, everything, right?
Yeah.
At this meeting, this is saying that now you want permanent markers at the line of work. So these people, you have what, 2 sets of boulders, 2 sets of signs?
I don't think so.
Well, that's what it
We talked
says.
about that.
I didn't think we were having 2 sets. I
No.
thought we
No,
picked.
they can be the same signs.
They're
That's
not,
what that
they're in
says.
different places. It says, "The edge of the clearing shall be staked and posted at no further disturbance. Permanent setback markers along the limited line of work." We already have, on the whole plan, as a condition of this, we have alternating every 30 feet, signs and boulders. So now, what are we gonna put, another set of signs and boulders 30 feet inside of that?
No, so that would be a duplicate, so.
No, it wasn't intended to duplicate, and I would have to go back to my
Yeah.
meeting notes, but we definitely talked about signs and about a requirement,
did
it's
talk
putting in a
about
special
signs.
condition to reflect
Oh,
that
yeah,
there should be
no,
no
I
disturbance
know.
signs.
But
So
there's
they don't
supposed to be
go- yeah.
one row, there's not
Yeah.
supposed
No,
to.
No,
I
it's
don't-
the same signs that would be in.
Where's the second row? I missed it.
Well, that's the, again, the disadvantage to not being part of the planning board process, because you guys aren't familiar with the fact that they've established
Yeah, because
these
we,
different.
Well, we
the
can't,
box and
It's
then the
on the
sign, is that
plan,
what they're required
it's
to put
on
in?
there, it's in
Yeah.
there, it was discussed.
we did, and we talked
I'm-
about
And I'm
it.
trying to hold
Yeah.
right now,
Yeah.
not to tell my real feelings about this.
Well, to me, we had this discussion about this limit of work. And where, and the request came to increase the lawns into the 100-foot buffer, right? You came to us as part of the NOI and said, we wanna have an increased area of disturbance, and we're gonna be inside the 100-foot buffer, and that's why we had that NOI for that and the level spreader. So all we want to do is make sure that, and I don't think anybody interpreted this to be 2 rows of signs or boulders. It's supposed to be 1. And I guess the question that I would have is, where was that supposed to be? Is it supposed to be, where do you interpret that line to be?
It's on the plan, I interpret it anywhere. It is on that plan as the delineation between the open space parcel and the rear of the lots.
Okay. So the discussion, but the
and-
discussion we had, Bill, was how do we keep people from clearing?
Yeah, but number 35 is exactly what we discussed.
Okay.
Is no tree removal will be allowed beyond the limit of the work shown on the approved plans. Any additional vegetative clearing or removal will require a separate permit filing application with the Conservation Commission. This condition survives.
Okay,
That was the discussion.
right.
but if we don't have the signs up when these are sowed, Bill, you'll have people going out there, even though it says you can't clear any more trees, they'll go out there and clear the trees. And that's why we want these permanent markers there. I mean, it happens all the time, Bill.
Okay, I just gotta tell you, I got a fundamental,
Yeah.
big frickin' problem here. When something's voted and new stuff goes in, that's just, it's against the law, period.
But we did discuss the signs and protecting that area. I know we discussed that at the meeting and trying to figure out a way to protect the buffer. And we agreed to additional clearing.
Yeah, this wasn't discussed, there was a lot of discussion, but the whole derivation of this, we had all those determinations to go back. I don't want to rehash the whole thing, the determination withdrawn, it wasn't acted on, it was acted on. We agreed to sit down, we had a thing, the thing was supposed to have been done, that didn't happen either. And to be candid with you, I don't like getting thrown under the bus is that somehow I'm causing a problem. It was at the last meeting, as Richard said, the answer was very clear and distinct. Yeah, everyone will come in and sign stuff. And this isn't like there's any, and again, kind of the intimation here, somehow there's trickery or something involved, which is crap. I've been doing this for a number of years. I actually called 2 or 3 times to make sure there's something, because I've been practicing the town of Scituate my whole life. I've never had something constructively improved in my whole life, and I don't want anything constructively improved because I believe in the process of this. But when I don't even know what to say. I mean, the discussions I've had. This is discussion number 2 tonight or 3 that's highly disturbing. You know, I just.
So again, the pieces in this order that you feel are not supposed to be there is A number 1 that seems to have been in every set of orders, but you're saying that that doesn't work for a mortgage or?
Well, you tell me. You have laws in which you administer, and you're creating something here. Who is to tell us if something, who is to tell something whether it is inadequate for whatever reason? What does that mean? What does that mean? Does that mean if one stone or a pebble of gravel isn't where it's supposed to be, that it's inadequate?
You can't measure that description. It's not immeasurable, so.
It's immeasurable. And that's what due process is all about. That's why the general laws and why the town bylaws are adopted, so you know what the rules are. There are no rules there, 0 rules. And it isn't as bad, and someone says, well, if something is designed whatever, then it goes on, may require the redesign or reconstruction of any element of the project. Those are pretty profound words.
Well,
considering there's a stormwater permit already been issued.
I'm glad you picked up on that.
But I've been signing orders for the last 10 years with that statement in.
I know.
Yeah, I thought
So
the
you're the
town
first
council
one that's
drafted that
picked up,
one.
Bill.
Yeah, I didn't,
All
we
right,
inherited that one.
so there's
somewhere along the line.
one.
No, the point I'm getting to is 31, I recognize all those things, and that's all good stuff. And other than 5, there is no natural heritage permit, so it seems, I'm always worried, it says, any required special conditions by natural heritage. There aren't. It's not in the zone, so it always makes me a little nervous, but I suppose.
That's just another standard one that we carry just in case it was, in case it applied. You know, that's another one that's in all of our
32 was discussed, 35 was discussed, 33 and 34, other than they're redundant, I don't know what the difference between one and the other is, I don't get that. But I just don't know how you can have 2 sets of things, and so the planning board sets up, we already have a gazillion boulders, a gazillion
We understand,
signs.
we understand.
And so now, we're creating a second set.
No, you're not.
No.
We don't want you to.
Yeah, that's not the
That
intent
was
there.
ours to protect, and so this happens.
So the boulders and the signs that the planning board approved separate the properties from the open space, right? And there's an open space strip that runs around that property.
Correct.
And so that was the demarcation for that open space.
Right.
And
Then the other signs go at the limit of work.
so,
Right.
but so then, and you guys worked that out with the planning board. And then filed with the commission with a request to extend the level spreader further out, because that's what the planning board requested, right? And that was approved. And then the second part of that request was to allow additional clearing on the lots within the 100-foot buffer. Originally, in your proposal, the clearing was not to be
within the 100-foot buffer. And then
When you said the original proposal, Frank, which one do you mean?
the proposal that came, that was submitted, if that clearing were included in the original filing with the planning board, then the Conservation Commission would have been party to the whole process with the planning board, because you would have been in jurisdiction. Yes or no?
I disagree, but again,
So let's figure.
I don't even know what to do any
So
further.
let's-
I don't. We were supposed to be closing on Friday on this thing.
So let's,
And this is so far out of warp
so let's,
with everyone.
I think we're down.
Blown to bits. And what I'm saying is, hey, at this juncture, I don't even know what to do anymore.
Well,
It's-
it seems to me like we're down to one item,
About the signs?
the demarcation. It seems to me is where we're,
Yeah, I mean, can we add a phrase that makes it clear that the intent of the signs is to be consistent with what was already part of the planning board decision?
And if it already is part of the planning board decision, then why do you need it?
so here's,
To reinforce our.
so here's the glitch that would not have happened. Let's just say that they didn't approach us. Let's just say that they didn't approach us and say, we'd like to clear into the 100-foot buffer, right? We had a hearing and it just increased the length of the level spreader. And we said, well, we understand that because the planning board wanted that to be extended. So we probably would have conditioned that, or we did condition it, all right? This project would have gone forward and the only demarcation would have been at the line between the property owner's property and the open space. Okay? There never would have been a second set of markers at the 100-foot buffer, because it never would have come to us. Is everybody clear on that?
Yes.
Am I right? So, by coming to us and saying we want to clear some into this and getting permission, and us putting verbiage in there that says that the owner shouldn't do that, on top of that, we've added a layer that says we want another set of signs at that line.
So
Which is what you guys talked about.
So
Yeah.
couldn't we rephrase it, and because everybody always looks at the order of conditions as how they're judging a project, nobody goes back to the planner, if we referenced per the planning board.
But we didn't know the planning board already had boulders.
Okay, but I'm saying for now, we can just
We do
change
it.
it.
No, we did.
We
We
did.
do-
Yeah,
Per the planning board, and
We
we
knew that-
just reiterate
Yeah,
what they
you're right.
said, so it's in the order, but it isn't secondary, it's just referencing that as a, that it needs to be there.
Right, and, well, and I think that your intent was, I mean, my interpretation is that you wanted future owners of these lots to
Yeah, 'cause
know
that's
that
what
if they
happened.
were to go clear, that
Yeah.
there's a no disturb buffer.
Right.
But the buff,
So that's the whole thing.
the mark that they already have, and I don't have the plan in front of me, Paul, maybe you remember. What's the distance, the difference between clearing, the additional clearing that they want to do, and,
The property line,
yeah,
some places it's about 10 feet, other places it might be 20 feet.
right. So it's not like, it's not a huge area,
No, and there's really not that many trees in some of these lots.
right.
It's pretty sparse.
Okay.
Um,
So if we were to eliminate our requirement to put the second set of signs in, we keep the verbiage there that they're not supposed to disturb any further than what's already there. Is the commission satisfied with that?
Well, I think, isn't it in there too, that it's clear that if they were to go forward with additional clearing, they'd have to come back to us anyway?
Yes,
Yes.
that's
Number
yes.
35.
So then that, I think, covers us. I
Right.
mean, so I mean.
And there's already
I feel comfortable striking that,
there's already signage that keeps people out of the 50,
yeah.
was my point in asking Paul the distance. So people are already they're probably more like at 75 feet
from the wetland. The demarcation that the planning board's already requesting is probably 75 feet from the,
Paul would know that better.
At least some.
Yeah, the entire
Yeah.
50-foot buffer is within the open space.
I understand.
Yeah.
So I think that, I don't personally have a problem with removing that second set of signs, leaving the ones where the planning board had. It protects our intent, and we still have verbiage in there that technically people should be coming to us before they do any additional
Before they
clearing.
try and
Yeah,
clear
yeah, I
again.
think that covers you, yeah,
All right?
yeah.
Is that acceptable to you?
Yeah, and this number 30, is that staying in there or is it not staying in there?
Which is number 30?
That's the one
That's
that,
where it's creating a separate body of law.
Would town council have put that in there at some time in the past, or some former agent, that is something significant
Well,
about
if
that?
Steve was still here, he could tell you.
Yeah, he probably could, I know, damn.
I don't know.
I'd be comfortable removing it as the agent. If that gets you anywhere, but.
I think it should be
He's the
removed.
lawyer, so he would know.
Because you can't, it's immeasurable. It could throw everything into chaos because this, your opinion, your opinion, your opinion could all be
What could be
this.
substituted for that bill that would work?
Well, it's probably been
It
in there since.
it already says in here, we have to comply with the state law and the town law.
It's,
It is
Bill, honestly,
redundant.
it's probably been in there
Redundant
since
and vague.
1986, and nobody's picked up on it until you just did, so.
I'm shocked
Or
Steve
had a
did,
problem
because he
with-
used to
for
read
some
them
reason.
with a fine tooth comb.
I know,
Remember that?
yeah.
Bajorka would read them with a fine tooth comb.
So that should
I'm
take care
shocked.
of it. then.
but he's not a lawyer.
Oh, but he,
He
well,
may think he is,
Oh,
but
he's
he's
not
not.
practicing.
Bill, can we have them sign the last page and
Sure.
then revise what
Yes.
we need to revise?
Yeah,
And get it to
you
you in
sign
the morning?
Yeah, that's fine. Are you signing the determination also?
Yes.
There's a negative determination.
No, I think they've already signed that, right?
Yeah.
Didn't that
I
go
never,
out?
no.
Yeah,
no.
that's already
that,
been.
that was
that's
last
out.
meeting. That's,
That's already.
I didn't get it.
well,
It might be in the mail.
you weren't.
Were
the
you on
applicant?
Were you on the,
Was it given to them or to the town?
It might have gone to the builders
were you on the
directly.
RDA listed?
Huh?
Were you listed?
I don't know, Carol, I'll look,
Then
but we'll,
you weren't, you wouldn't get a copy unless you were.
But it was signed.
Yeah.
You won't get a copy of this unless you're on the notice of intent. So if you want the original, let me know.
the original, what? RDA? Okay, thanks.
Who got, probably Welby got the original, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, on the notice, that went to, that was actually work on the town land, so did the town get that?
They're very-
On the RDA?
No.
You filed on behalf of the town, you're working on the town's property. All right, well, somebody's got it.
Back in the drawer signed, so somebody did get it.
Okay.
I'll figure it out, thanks, Carol.
I mean, that doesn't have to be recorded or anything anyway.
Can we go home now?
I know, but the bank attorneys and everything need to have those, they won't know.
Oh, we got a couple more things.
All right,
Bill, so do you want to give us a copy of
Of
what
what?
you've?
Xed
or-
out.
Yeah, Xed out, so just so we don't.
Yeah.
Know for sure what we're looking at.
Okay, what else?
Thank you. Thanks, I'm sorry to take up.
No, hey, you
You found a good thing.
helped us. I
even if
make-
it took till 10:30.
Yeah, we're gonna remember that in the morning when we're getting up. I make a motion, we extend 14 Kimberly Road access driveway.
Second, do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Uh,
And a certificate of compliance. Tedeschi at 764 Corner Stetson, what was that one for, Amy?
I don't know.
That was a septic system,
Wait a
So-
second.
the Tedeschi, was a
Oh,
septic system.
all right. No, I just had to, yeah,
Back from a very long time ago.
very long time ago.
And
That's
Patrick
what's
went
his
out
name.
there and took a look at it, and
Does he still own that house? I thought he sold it.
Who knows, but he might have
Are we
filed for
gonna-
it. Doesn't matter.
Let's go.
Okay, so you're good with it?
yes.
Okay. All right.
I make a motion to.
I don't even think we have to vote for, we don't have to vote
No,
for.
we don't vote on
All
that.
right.
I make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
That does not.
Can I,
I have I've got a question now that Mrs. Cameron's.